You have a Jewish friend?
No, sir, I do not have a Jewish friend. I am the black Jew. I am the black Hebrew. I am a member of the family of the black Hebrew Israelites. But if you're asking me, do I have a white so-called Jew friend who is not in that line of Semites, so I can't be anti-Semitic? Did you know that there are Semites in Africa? Did you know that there are Semites in Asia? That there are some Semites so black until they're blue black, purple black, and beautiful? These are people using a political term, anti-Semitism, when it's really anti-Kemetism and anti-black program.
But nevertheless, there is true Hebrews. There is a true people of the Most High that is scattered throughout the nations of the earth this day. It is not whom that many people believe they are, such as the so-called Jews in the nation-state of Israel that we so see before us right now. I would interject that the true biblical Hebrews are the so-called African-American people that are scattered abroad throughout the world. It is very important that you understand who the true Hebrews are, because that end-time prophecy, lots of it, surround these individuals. Now please understand that not every single black person is a true Hebrew, but it is those that are under the curse of Deuteronomy 28.
Shalom, shalom from Israel. This is Ola, the daughter of Jethro. And I just heard that you black people that was stolen from Africa to America, that you don't know who you are. But you are the children of Yahweh, the children of Israel. And I'm telling you, you have to come back to your homeland, here to Zion, to Jerusalem, because us the Gentiles, we do need you. We need you to come and pray, because you are our saviors. You're the one that was chosen by Yahweh to live in this land, not the Jewish people, it's you. You were stolen from Africa, they deceived you, they told you that you are slaves, but you actually the children of Israel. And it's time just to come back. Come for your people, come back for us, come back for the whole Gentiles, because only you gonna save us. So please come back to Zion.
Which are an ancient community of the Israelite exiles. Now this is, for the most part, the general consensus of the largest people in Africa. You do have different groups like the Abu Daya in Uganda who aren't saying they're from the lost tribes, but have joined the people of Israel in the large amounts of numbers. One other location I'd like to, actually before I go into this other location, what's fascinating is, which I speak about, is the transatlantic slave trade. A large percentage of it actually came from Igbo territory. So these Igbo today in Nigeria, who are practicing Jews, numbering the 40 million people with customs and traditions, doing circumcision on the 8th day, were the same exact people brought to the Americas on the transatlantic slave trade. Now, if someone goes to Times Square in New York today, you'll see African Americans dressed in Israelite outfits and yelling at people saying, "You're not the real Jews, we're the real Jews." And so most people saying, "Well, you guys are kooky, you just made this whole thing up, you made up a religion and an identity." Actually, no, they are the blood descendants, most likely, of the people who, from Israel, were brought from Africa to America. So it's very fascinating.
The wisdom of Solomon in the Apocrypha in the 5th chapter talks about how Jacob, how the heathen is going to be amazed and confounded when they realize that so-called black man is that chosen line.
In America, there was a slave trade. And a lot of the slaves, a very high percentage of them, came from Western Nigerian ports. And in America today, you see a very large movement of African Americans who say that they're the real chosen people, that they're the children of Israel, they're the Judeans. So what are they just trying to create an identity for themselves because they were slaves, or is there really something here? And the answer is, most likely there is something there. And most likely, maybe that they were the original Israelites, and maybe that the Jewish people today who are white, Caucasian people came in a little bit later on.
I just wanted to come to you to impart some knowledge onto you about who the true biblical Hebrew Israelites are. Bloodline-wise, they are the so-called African Americans.
Brothers and sisters, blacks of America, it's you. You are the true Hebrews. You are the true Hebrews from the Bible. America gonna do everything, gonna invest as much money as it has, gonna fight as much wars as they can, gonna invite as much weapons as they can just to hide this away from you. Gonna take Israel, gonna bring white people here, and to tell you these are the Jews. Gonna kill you, gonna kill Arabs, gonna mistreat white people like this guy, just to tell you this lie that you are nobody and we are the Jews with all the history and so on. It has been deleted, your history. You don't know who you are. Don't forget about it. This is why, because America has been taking your history away, never to find out that it's all about you. I'm telling you this, please. I don't ask you to come to Israel and to start a revolution. I'm just asking you to start thinking this way, to believe me a little bit.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. You're tuned in to the Scoring Black Man podcast. I'm your host, Hilltop Zadok Israel. I got my co-host in the building, Brother Don Yehuda, Fire Talk Radio podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on both channels. And I got special guests, man. You know what I'm saying? We ain't going to call them a guest. We're just going to call them family. You know what I'm saying? The mighty, mighty, mighty Hebrew in the building, back with another banger part 2. In the hot seat, you know what I'm saying? And we got a special guest, you know what I'm saying? He's the young heir of the mighty, mighty Hebrew in the building, you know what I'm saying? The young prince, the son of the mighty Hebrew. And this is mighty Hebrew, the Hebrew Anthropogenesis. I think I pronounced it right, Cosmo, and part 2 of the mighty Hebrew in the hot seat. Y'all boys unmic yourselves and shalom to everybody.
Shalom, everybody.
Shalom. What's going on? What's going on?
Hey, we back.
Back in the building.
We back.
Back in the building. Somebody got like a little back play back there.
I think when my son is here, he might have a type where as though we got to mute our mic so we can all hear him.
Okay.
Gotcha.
All right.
If you want to say something real quick, Bang, go ahead. You can say something, son.
Shalom, shalom, family. I just want to put this out there. I know my father is a very humble man, and I just want to address this. The inspiration that I get from just listening to him is amazing, and I genuinely mean this. I believe that he is phenomenal at at his scholarship, and he's an amazing scholar. Today I'll be listening more than I'll speak, so I can learn something. That's really about it. Thank you. And I'm honored to even be in all of y'all presence. I appreciate y'all for having me today. And I thank y'all very much for having me.
Well, we appreciate having you, young brother. It's always
Likewise.
very inspirational to see the youth come out and support the truth. And, you know what I'm saying, it's going to be young kings like yourself that are going to help spread this message to the youth up under you, you know what I'm saying, and your peers. So it's always good. You're always welcome to come on. And, yeah, you know what I'm saying, your daddy going to get. I guess I'm going to let Brother Don Yehuda do most of the question asking. We're going to do the hot seat first. And then we'll have some questions afterwards. If there's any questions from the people in the audience or whatever, Brother Don Yehuda, you know, you can go ahead and start asking some questions. I know you probably had some ready or written down or whatever. And, you know, I might have some questions out.
Yeah, so I guess my question is going to just be based off of what we kind of went over last show. So that way we can segue into the information you're going to go over today. So just getting right into it. Last time when you was on here on the hot seat, you were going into the evolution, which was kind of a de-evolution, so to say, of the Elohim coming from the light and then going through the different phases of, I believe, what the Sanskrit word would be the Manu, or the Adam Codman down into what we have today, which is the modern man and woman that we have here. Could you explain just briefly so we can get a idea for those who may have not seen part one? And if you haven't, go back and check that out on the Scoring Black Man podcast, a very powerful informational show with Prince Charlene Dean bringing the information. Could you kind of highlight just how the root races go as far as the first root race down to the fifth root race, which I believe you stopped at the Aryan, which is the fifth root race that we at right now?
Absolutely. Hallelujah. Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Ahad. First and foremost, I give all praise and honor to Yahweh, the supreme, intelligent, powerful one of our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, those striving for righteousness, they all over the planet Earth. I say unto the family, Shalom Aleichem. It's definitely an honor and a privilege to be on the Scoring Black Man podcast. As usual, shout out to Hilltop, shout out to Don Yehuda, and a special shout out to my Bane, my son, my flesh and blood, Prince Shar Adonai Zadak is in the building. Hallelujah. Born in the Hebrew culture, all that. So it's definitely an honor. And out of all my children, he's the very first one to, you know what I'm saying, be on the podcast with me. And this is the first podcast because, you know, you know how these social media streets are. So I really try to keep my children, you know what I'm saying,
right,
you know, away from. But my son, you know, he's a very interesting spirit. You know what I mean? Very similar to me. Even the way he dressed, you know, he has a very you know, eccentric way of dressing, like a GQ kind of vibe. You know what I'm saying? So, and his Emi's mother was just talking to me the other day, and she was like, "Boy, that's you." So, my son for a very long time, you know, been doing his own little independent research as well. And, you know, and he's a, you know, adamant in studying the Bible and, you know, just all different types of things. So, but I definitely want to dedicate this show right here on record to my son, you know what I mean? And to the rest of my children that's not here, but I'm focusing on him because he's actually here. But getting to your question, for one to understand what is called devolution and the descension from ascent from the Elohim embodying themselves in human form, one must have a thorough understanding of cosmology, what I define as Hebrew Cosmogenesis, and anthropology, what we define over here at the Mighty Hebrew University in Tanzania, East Africa, as Hebrew Anthropogenesis. Now, what are these things? Hebrew Cosmogenesis is the cosmological understanding of the first pages of Bereshit, which later has become referred as Genesis. Now, the way we've been reading these scriptures, and mainly because we're focusing on this Elohim embodying themselves in what theosophists call root races. We call them over here root epics, because sometimes that term race can be misconstrued into superiority complexes versus inferiority complexes. So we're going back to the one, meaning the original understanding of this cosmological and anthropological thought. So when you read it in the Bereshit or the Genesis, you have to first understand that if we're talking about the days of Moshe, Moses, then we know that there were influences of the Hebrews towards the people of Kemet, and the people of Kemet having influences towards the Hebrews in the sociological environment. Okay, so when we brought forth our script, our ancient Hebraic script that stems back to an ancient vibrational language known as Zenzar. We'll get into that as we develop. Well, this script, or this pictorial script, became influenced by a pictorial script in Egypt known as Imtunetu or Meduneta. So when we look at the Sinaitic pictorial Hebrew, which that's what archaeologists call today, there were a lot of mining caves in Kemet that became unearthed in 1905 by a man by the name of Petrie. And Petrie was a well-respected Egyptologist. And Petrie Finders found what was known as the Sinaitic inscriptions. You get a scholar by the name of Pultovich back in 2016 that translated these sculptures that they found in these caves. And the book is known as the world's oldest language. And he translated these carvings, and what it demonstrated was the Hebrew oppression that took place, because we have in record Yaakov or Jacob coming into the land 1876 BCE. We see the death of Yosef or Joseph, and we see the birth of Moses, roughly around 1526 BCE. And we also see this oppression, which was 210 years of our forefathers and foremothers in Egypt. And we see this exodus taking place 1446 BCE. To say all that is to say, we have to look at the era of writing at that time. So it wouldn't be what we know as the Paleo-Hebrew. It would be the Sinaitic inscriptions, because this is what we see the slaves writing in. So having that understanding, what was the understanding at that time of these symbols? And what we have done at the Mighty Hebrew University is we transferred them symbols to the Tanakh, taking away the block Hebrew and going into the most oldest manuscript writing of the Hebrews of that era, and then start translating. So now when you see the word Yom in Hebrew, which in the abstract, it means day, but in the Hebrew Sinaitic pictorial Hebrew, you see three hieroglyphic symbols, Hebrew hieroglyphic symbols. You see a Yod, you see a Wav, and you see a Mem. The Yod in ancient Sinaitic Hebrew is symbolic to an outstretched arm, gripping on something. Then you see the Woe, or the Wa, which is an image of a nail pressing down on something. Then you see the Mem, or the waters, or water waves. So when you say Yawam or Yam, now you're defining something that containeth and holds life. So Yawam or Yod in ancient pictorial Sinaitic Hebrew means that which containeth life. So each day in Genesis is not a literal 24-hour, 7-day-a-week day, but it's a root epic. So you have the first containment of life, the second containment of life, the third containment of life, the fourth containment of life, fifth containment of life, sixth containment of life, seventh containment of life. Each containment of life is defining a certain amount of years. So the first containment of life will start roughly 311 trillion, 40 billion years ago, till you get to the seventh containment of life, which is 100,000 BCE. We define these things by the way of what is known as the Yuga cycles, because when we understand Proto-Hebraic thought, Proto-Hebraic ethnicity, we will travel not to Mesopotamia, but to the Indian subcontinent known as Tomal, in this area where a group known as the Yadavas centralized themselves. The Yadavas was a Proto-Hebrew subclan amongst a greater body of Hebrews. Yadava is the ancient Sanskrit word for the Hebrew word Yehuda, Yehowadah, Judah. Abraham being from the Yadava, we see that Yaakov, Jacob names his fourth son Judah, Yehuda, Yehowadah, Yawadah, after the pre-existent tribe from which Abraham came from, the Yodavas. So having that retrospect, and then we also have classical scholars, Philo, Prodicus, Josephus, Homer, Herodotus, etc., taking the ancient Hebrews back to the Indus Valley. And during the Ramayanian War, you see the Hebrews going west into Asia. So you have two Hebrews in classical record, Eastern Ethiopians, Western Ethiopians. The Eastern Ethiopians were known as the Yadavas that sat in the Indus Valley, and they stayed there and later on became known as Dalit, which in the Sanskrit word means untouchable, which goes back to the Hebrew root word da, which means to make thin or to crush. Then you have those that go into Western Asia Minor, Mesopotamia, Canaan land, Kemet. They became known as the Western Ethiopians. This is why even when you see Yehuda, right? But we also see a Canaanite woman with the feminine word Yahudith or Judith, right? So that shows us that this word Yahuda existed pre or before even the birth of Judah. So when you look at these root epics, you're seeing the Elohim time traveling by the way of Merkaba light or portalization. And in the process of this Adam Chachma, or this Elohim embodying themselves in human form, the residue of our cosmic bodies that we didn't need became elements of the universe from the multiverse. The solar system that you see is a byproduct of your cosmic self. So the sun, the moon, the stars, the 9 planets, all of them are residue that the body didn't need to solidify themselves or ourselves in human form. So when you're seeing this unfolding within the Genesis process, you're seeing the unfolding of our mind from the subjective realm into the objective realm, to which you get Israel today. Now, the devolution that you was talking about, Don Yahuda, is a product of our embodiment in human form, as Psalms chapter 82 says. But we started to mix with subspecies outside of the garden. When we mix with them subspecies, we produce hybrids. The first hybrid that we have in the paleontological record is known as Ramapithecus. We demonstrated in the last portion of this presentation that Ramapithecus was named in 1964 by paleontologists after the Hindu deity Rama. Rama was this power that supposedly through hybridization gave birth or created what is known as Hanuman. Hanuman was the monkey man beast, and also it's the Sanskrit word for the English word human. And we also know when we read this Ramayana record of Rama producing these hybrids, this is also the inspiration of producers that made the movie Planet of the Apes. This is a historical fact that they get their research from, I see your hand, I'm about to close it out. Hilltop, I see you. This is where they got the info. Because I'm on the paragon right now. I got to show off because my son here. So I got to show off and make sure I get everything
Hey, go ahead, cook. Go ahead, cook.
Right. So,
Hey, I just had a question because he was. Go ahead. Though.
So when you see this movie, Planet of the Apes, and you understand Caesar and his tongue became untied, right? We talking about the hibernization of those that were dealing with instinctive will, right? To the caveman, to now speaking. We got to understand the symbolic language that we see in these movies, right? Of them talking about themselves coming through hibernization. So I think I answered your question. Go ahead, Helltop.
Hey, real quick, Don Yehuda, let me ask him because this is what I mean to ask you last time when you was I think you had broke that down and about the Indian gods and having these people being born with tails. You know what I'm saying? You brought it up last time, and I was meaning to get more into it because but it slipped my mind. You know what I'm saying? I'm glad you brought it up again. What you think about, because we know people, and a lot of people from India too, but a lot of Indian people and some white people, over in Eastern European countries are being born with tails. What you think about it, and what you got to say about it?
That's a very, very good question, right? And I knew, and see, in my PowerPoint presentation, you and I, y'all know that picture up there, right? Of a baby with a coccyx shell, right? Now, from the ancient archaic records, what we have, hold on, y'all. What we have, okay, let me get this right.
Hey, now, hey, Mighty Hebrew, because you like to say the archaic records quite a bit, so don't forget your frame of thought. But can you explain to the audience what does that mean, the archaic records, before you go into that information?
Okay, the archaic records that we have, archaic means primitive, ancient, old. Okay, the records that I'm referring to, it's known as the stanza of Zion. When you go into a writing known as the Secret Doctrine by Madam H.P. Blavatsky, where people fail to understand because they're not historians and they don't understand symbolism and mythology. They think that Madam H.P. Blavatsky wrote the stanza of Zion. No, she did not. The stanza of Zion was written roughly 5,500 years, 13,500 years ago. Okay. And by the way of what you would call archaic symbols, ancient people before what you know as the papyrus era will write with symbols. Okay. So when you go into the Indus Valley in their Zion records, they use archaic symbols known as Zinzar. And in them records, they show what we're talking about. What Blavatsky did, and she did some mistranslations by mistake and even on purpose, okay? And even on purpose. But when you read her records or her works, she's only giving commentary. This is why when you actually get the book, you'll see the stanza of Zion record, and then underneath you'll see her commentary. What's above she didn't write, what's below she wrote. So when one say, oh, she wrote that, automatically we know they don't know what they're talking about. So when I talk about the archaic records, I'm talking about the records that were left behind. And inside them records, it said, because this was written by sages and seers from the Indus Valley, they teach that what we define today as the white man is an outgrowth, a hybridization by way of a devolution. This is what they teach. And they say out of their mouths that there were some beings that were half monkey-like and half human. And when we look at many of the deformities that we see in the world, the most deformities we see with these ape-like man attributes is in two locations, Bangladesh and India. So when we look, we see that the so-called white man say that the English language came out of Sanskrit. They call it Indo-European. They even try to align themselves with the Aryan, which is true in some degrees, but false. It's true because today's so-called white man come out of the Aryan root epic, even though Aryans themselves are black, but we're not talking about the class Aryan. We're talking about a root epic. So yes, they're from out of the Aryan root epic, but they're not Aryan by class, which only means nobility. That was a part of the original black Aryan caste system that was in the Indus Valley. Okay, so now when you talk about these deformities, we see the cactus tail. In these archaic records known as the stands of Zion, they call it the conda buffer. And what they taught is that this conda buffer would drag on the ground to produce like a force field energy, so to say. And as they started to hibernate more and more, the cactus tail or the conda buffer started to shrink as they started to develop or adapt more to their environment that wasn't necessary no more. So when you talk about Charles Darwin and his evolutionary theory, don't try to stop the so-called white man in defining who he is. He's telling you his origin. We're not of the same origin. He's telling you his origin. He even knows that he is a byproduct of a primate. And we read in the stanza of Zion, in the first part, known as the sin of the mindless. And in the sin of the mindless, it tells us that our human family or hominin family mixed with subspecies that weren't a part of our human family. And we amalgamated with these people and we produced the Ramapithecus, the Australopithecus, the Homo erectus, the Neanderthalians, the Cro-Magnon, etc., etc. And when you look in the Neanderthalian and the Denisovans and all them, you see what is called RH rhesus monkey DNA. And then when you see the dark nations, not all of them, but those of the Yoruba and the San and all them, you find something called ghost gene DNA. I'm saying that the ghost gene DNA is a product of some dark-skinned nations mixing with subspecies, and then the RH rhesus monkey DNA gene that you find in the Neanderthalians is a product of hominin species mixing with a subspecies of a different line. And within that line, this is the byproduct of what we call the white race today.
Okay. That was a great breakdown. Now, you said a couple of things in there I want to touch on because let's kind of make it real because that's a lot of information to unpack for people. So my question is, when you were talking about the hybridization, if I'm saying that right, excuse me if I'm not, when man was intermingling with animals, would you say that would tie into books like Genesis chapter 6, verses 5 and 6 in the book of Jubilees, when it said that Elohim got mad with man due to all the wickedness, and then you get a little bit more of the information of Jubilees when it said they was mixing species and things of that nature. Does this tie into that information that we read in these books?
Absolutely. When one understands that Bereshit or Genesis 6 is a rethought of something that previously happened. Remember, our people will identify events or dramatic events to previous ones. So when you see in Genesis 6, yes, that behavior occurred at that time, but the reason why it's a focal point because it's something that previously happened before in another root epic. So you're absolutely correct. When you bring up the book of Jubilees and the pseudepipical records, and when you bring up the account in Genesis 6, when the quote unquote sons of God went into the daughters of men, you're seeing a form of hibernization. Even when you go into Genesis or Bereshit, the third or fourth chapter, the fourth chapter, we see that Cain and Abel were brothers. Cain murders his brother, but he goes somewhere and gets a wife. And we are told that there were nations or doctrines not to deal with that were being defined as trees. So we know that there were other people, there were other species. I don't want to say animal in the sense, but I will say animal like. So I want to you know what I mean? Because these species that we mix with, in some retrospects, could have been a part of the original human family, but then also branched off into a subspecies because a portion might have mixed with a species not of them. And then they became a branch, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is why at the Mighty Hebrew University, we don't teach what is known as a monogenesis. We teach a polygenesis. So it wasn't like this one literal man and this one literal woman, and then it produced the whole entire planet. No, that was just one line from what people already around. Okay, so there were other beings that are actually not direct descendants of Noah. When we deal with the interpretations of religiosity to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they are the ones that teach this lineal understanding of things. We, the original Hebrews, were a circular people, but with a line under the circle so we can move patterns, so to say, so we can change our destiny. There are three types of thinking in the worldview. You have the lineal thinking, you have the circular, and then you have the circular with the line controlling the circle. So you have those that are Eurocentric, that see things narrow-mindedly with a lineal understanding. So they have to date everything in a chronological line. But history is so complex that it can't just be covered like that. Then you have those that are Afrocentric, that see things circularly. So it's like, it's destiny. You can't change it. That's why on the ground in Africa, where I'm at, and I've studied many tribes, a lot of these tribes look at things as just their fate, and there's no way of changing it. This is why a lot of the fight from many of the tribes in Africa isn't there to fight off the colonialists or the colonists, because it's being defined within their cultural understanding that it's just their destiny and they can't change it. Whereas though with the Hebrews, we see things circularly, but the circle can be moved with a pattern. So we can change, even though we have a destiny, we can change our condition. That's the difference. This is why hearken to me, oh Yisrael, and do the law, statutes, and commandments. Thus, thus, and thus. If you do this, thus and thus will happen. If you do that, thus and thus will happen. And if you fall by the wayside or waist deep, and if you rethink yourself, as Malik Shalomo or King Solomon said, if you rethink yourself, right, then from there you can transform what was to what is. You see what I'm saying? That's the difference from us and the other nations.
Okay. You said something prominent that I believe also, and I know the brother Fred Jackson, he teaches. I heard other people teach it. That everybody on this earth right now don't descend from Noah. Is not from Ham, Japheth, and Shem. Can you expound a little bit more on that? What these, you know what I'm saying? Because my understanding of your understanding, I believe what you're saying is that these other nations outside of Noah really came from like Neanderthal type animal type humans, or what you want to call them, Neanderthal type humans.
It could be Neanderthalian type, any type of type. When you look at the story of the flood and Noah, one of the problems is we're under the impression that the whole entire earth was flooded, because many translations say earth, but we never been told that Eretz, which is modern Hebrew, or Arat Tazah, which is ancient Hebrew, can be translated as ground, land, field, etc., region. So it's a difference in translation if you say the whole earth was flooded versus the whole land was flooded. You see the difference in thought. The whole earth gives the understanding that the whole entire planet was destroyed and only left Noah, versus a region was destroyed that left Noah. But that's not to say that there wasn't other people around the world. So once we understand that the flood, because there were quite a few floods even before Noah, and I expound on that last week, a couple of weeks ago. When we understand the story of Noah's flood, which was 9,564 BCE, we understand that that was a region and not the whole entire planet. So that right there, it explains that there are other people on the planet that are not descendants of Noah.
I agree. Brother, don't you go ahead.
Also with the Noah situation, right? When you look at ancient texts like the Sumerian texts, the biblical texts, and even the Hindu text, there's a correlation between the biblical patriarchs, the Sumerian kings, and the Hindu Manu. So would you say that the biblical patriarchs are actual men that lived at one time, or would you lean more towards these are actual cycles and progression of man or Manu through the evolution here on Earth?
That's a great question. My answer would be both. Because to have a subjective, you have to have an objective. Like, for instance, when you go into the book of Bereshit chapter 12, you see that Abraham is told to look into the sky and count the stars. And Abraham said he can't count the stars. And the response was, this will be your descendants to come. If you go to Joseph, and this will show where the nation of gods and earths, or the 5%ers, get their understanding of the sun, moon, and stars from. When you go to the story of Joseph, he had a dream that the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed down to him. And that was symbolic to his mother, father, and brothers. The point that I'm saying is we would use the subjective realm and the objective realm simultaneously. We never just use the subjective without the objective or the objective without the subjective. To say all that, to have a manu or a hadam come into physical form, naturally there had to be a subjective. And then there has to be an objective so people can see. So yes, when you look at the Sumerian kings list, when you look at the Manu in the laws of Manu, right? And when you look at the 10 biblical patriarchs, they're the same? Yes. Are they literal? Yes. Are they symbolic? Yes. Now, are they just literal alone? No. Are they just symbolic alone? No. The symbolic cosmogenesis or Hebrew cosmogenesis must have a literal or anthropogenesis or a Hebrew anthropogenesis. So yes, there has to be a cosmological and an anthropological understanding of these people. So to answer your question, yes, they were real, and yes, they were symbolic as well for a root epic, because they define the stage or incarnation, so to say, of that next root epic. Hallelujah.
Okay, so with that being said, with the root epics, because we are dealing with cycles of man, right? And evolution of time. Break down how all of this fits together with the stars, the 4 cycles, the yugas, because we see something in scripture in Ecclesiastes chapter 1 where it says there's nothing new under the sun. Everything goes through cycles. There's, everything that's been has happened before and basically gonna happen again. So can you go into the explanation of the cycles, the yugas, and so forth, and how everything kind of lines up scripturally with that?
Yes, absolutely. For one to understand that it aligns, we have to trace the Hebrews' understanding originally before it became diluted in religion. Once we establish the fact where the Hebrews came from, then we can understand the sciences behind what they were dealing with. And the main information that they were dealing with to understand their cycles and seasons by the way of telling the stories of incarnation were the Yuga cycles. The Yuga cycle that we in right now is known as the Kali Yuga, the age of the destruction, which in the scripture we call it the time of the Gentiles, where you see this in the books of Daniel. We see this in the 2nd chapter, along with the 7th chapter, going into the 12th chapter. So when one understands the Yuga cycle and the scientific breakdown of how to use the Yuga cycle, then we can understand what we see in the Genesis. We can understand the 7 menorah candlestick. We can understand the 6-pointed, what we know as the pentagram, which is 6 points, and then the 7 is the center. The 7 days a week, the 7th week, Shabbat, 52 days in the week, which is 7 plus 2, 5 plus 2 equals 7. 7 was a very important, significant number. And when we look into the Far East records, along with the Near East records, this 7 always aligned by the way of cycles. The only time it became days strictly is when we see it in the Western world, where they're taking these things literal. Now, can one take the 7 root cycles and look at them literally? Sure, they can when they understand themselves, one, as Elohim, and two, that they are multidimensional people. So yes, within this plane of existence that we are, we can take the 7 root epics and define it as days, so we can create a calculational chart how we define our seasons when we want to do our feast. But the initial intent wasn't just to operate like that, but to give us an understanding of our origin and how we can operate and move with this within each dispensation or anywhere within the multiverse that we make manifest. So we have to look at the Yuga cycle, and within the Yuga cycle, we see that this 7 comes into the being, and we see it roughly 311 trillion 40 billion years ago. We see that, and we see the ending of the 7. We see this etheric being that we call Elohim going into a watery element. We see this in the Genesis, the hovering over the abyss or the waters of this Elohim. We call that 2nd root epic the Molecurian root epic, which Theosophists call the Hyperborean. We see this trickling down more into a bony structure or an embodiment in human form that we call the Tamanadu root epic or the Hadamic root epic, which is known as the Lemurian root epic. We see now that our bodies are crystallizing more, but the body isn't fully coursed. So we still moving like clumsy light with a bony structure. As we develop, as the ego starts to dominate more and it starts to solidify more, the body structure starts to solidify. Then we get into what we know as the Patalian root epic, or what we know as the Atlantean root epic. And we see, and when one wants to know a date, so I can give the people an understanding, we see the Lemurian root epic coming around 187 million years ago. We see the decline of the Lemurian root epic 12 million BCE, which really ruptured the Tamanadu root epic was 2 things. We see a comet known as Condor hit the surface of the planet, and it destroyed many of the giants within the Lemurian root epic, along with the dinosaurs. And then you also see in 12 million BCE major volcanic eruptions that took place. And now you're starting to see the process of the Lemurian root epic going into mad tribalisms. And then you see one of the major subgroups from out of the Lemurian root epic known as the va-bohu. The va-bohu come roughly around 5.5 million BCE from out of the Sumatra, Madagascar, Tanzania area. And they start migrating into West Africa. And they build something known as the Eye of the Sahara. The Eye of the Sahara pushes from Northwest Africa or West Africa into what is known as the City of the Golden Gate, what we know today as South America. South America became 2 breakups from another flood roughly around 200,000 BCE. One side, the south, was known as Ruta. The north was known as Datia. 80,000 BCE, we see this destruction of Datia. It leaves Ruta. Plato calls it, in his writings, Post-Adonis. Some people pronounce it as Poseidonis. Post-Adonis or Ruta was the last portion of the Patalian or Atlantean root epic and Ruta Adatia became destroyed 9,564 BCE, which is known as Noah's flood. So you have the antediluvian root epic that we talked about, which we know as the etheric state or the Elohim root epic, the molecule root epic, the Tamanadu root epic, and a remnant of a major portion of the Patalian or the Atlantean root epic, and then you get into post-diluvian. That is the end of the what you call the Atlantean root epic, and now you're getting into the Aryan root epic. The Aryan root epic occurs roughly 1 million BCE. Now you're starting to see the origin, the direct origin of your oldest Hindu castes, your Kameshians. And I don't mean the Kameshians through the sons of Ham. I'm talking about the pre-dynastic Kameshians, such as your Nagas, such as your Nakals and your Scorpion Kings, and all this. Now you're seeing that post-diluvian till you get to the sons of Noah. Right now, we are in post-diluvian. We're in the post-diluvian root epic known as Aryan, or the noble root epic. Right now, we're in the fifth one. We still have another 25,000 years before we get to the indigo, which is known or the indigo root epic. And then after that, we have the Shabbat root epic. So that will be some time after that.
Okay. So going into, because you have mentioned we in the Kali Yuga, which is the last Yuga before the cycle restarts. So once the age of this Yuga, or the age of the Gentiles, as you mentioned, is over, theoretically we should be going into the Shatra Yuga. Now, would you classify that as the kingdom of Elohim here on earth?
Absolutely, absolutely. In the process, we're seeing that now through the sign of the coming of the shadow of the kingdom of Yah that sits in Damon, Israel. So we seeing this manifestation slowly taking place, and this revival first of the children of Israel rising in the Western Hemisphere and all over the world from first a religious mind state. Because you got to remember, the Israelites are coming. Remember, we were scattered amongst the nations of the earth because of our disobedience to uphold the righteous principles of Torah, to be an example and to guide the nations by the way of emanation to a certain plane of consciousness. So what you see us, we're waking up. You're seeing this rise of Israel Hill, 1798. You see the rise of Prophet Frank S. Cherry, 1886. Prophet William S. Crawley, 1896. Rabbi Leon Richelieu out in Brooklyn, New York, 1899. You're seeing this rise of Rabbi Wentworth A. Matthews, Rabbi Arnold Josiah Ford, Rabbi Reuben, Rabbi Eliyahu Bowie, etc., etc. You're seeing this catharsis, but they know that they're Israelites, but the understanding tenets were religious and based. As they developed, they started to take on a nationalistic overtone. And so what you see me develop, what is known as Hebrew Israelite sovereign nationalism. And as we develop more, then we start to form sovereign nationalism into civilization. And then from civilization, basically, Yahweh on earth as it is in the heavens. So yes, we are in the Sahara time where we're seeing now Hebrew Israelites understanding themselves from a nationalistic perspective to now opening their eyes, understanding that they are divinely Elohim or Elohim embodied in human form. When you look at the when you look at the pantheon, of all the ancient nations of the earth, where one fails to understand that the what you see is these nations worshiping the nation of Israel when they were known as Elohim. Remember when you go into Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 7, it says, when the Most High divided the sons of Noah, or the nations, he divided them based on the boundaries of the sons of Israel, right? And when you look at the sons of Israel or Jacob coming to the land of Egypt, and what we see, or in Exodus chapter 1, you'll see that 69 souls came in. Joseph was already there. So that made 70 souls. When you go into Genesis chapter 10, we see that there are 70 nations. So in essence, Israel existed pre or before they embodied themselves as the sons of Jacob, as the 70 Elohim. Each Elohim watched over the development of each nation amongst the 70 nations. So yes, we are in a charge where that is going to happen again. We lost focus of that because we let the nations create pantheons of us, right? And they started to worship us, and the people fell. This is why all the pantheons or all the ancient nations are the same. They just have different names, because in essence, they're really worshiping the Israelites before we were known as the Israelites. We were Elohim, and our charge was to watch over the 70 nations within their evolution, emanation, growth, and development on this plane of existence. But we lost focus of that. The reason why we were chosen is we had to incarnate ourselves, right? Again, known as Yasha'Allah or Yisrael. This is why when you see Yaakov or Jacob wrestling with the Malach or the angelic force, so to say, right? You see this rustling. But we know, metaphorically speaking or symbolic, we're talking about now the lower self tapping into the higher self by the way of experience and incarnation to manifest the kingdom of Yah on earth.
Hallelujah. So, man, that's a lot of information to unpack. And I'm telling you, hey, if y'all don't understand what's going on, definitely go back to part 1. And once you finish watching part 1, come right back into this one right here. So that way you can get a better understanding, because it's a meat pack, basically. Me and a brother back in the day said anything that had a lot of information is a meat pack because it's hard to digest, right? So this is a lot of information coming out with the cosmogenesis and the anthropogenesis. But once you get a base understanding of it, you can start seeing the correlation between the scriptures and between other ancient writings as far as the evolution, or should I say the progression of man through time and cycles here on earth. Did you have any questions, Hilltop? Yeah, go ahead.
Before you say anything, and the reason why I'm coming like this, so everybody to know, is because there has been a gross attack on the Hebrew Israelite community when they say on social media, Israelites, they don't have scholarship. So this is why I'm doing a lot of anthropological ground footwork research in Africa. I was sent over here, so everybody know, I was sent over here in 2021 by the late international ambassador and prime minister of the Kingdom of Yah and Damona, Israel, Northeastern Africa, by the late Prince Asiel ben Israel. He's the one that appointed me a prince, and he's the one that sent me on this mission actually before he died. Back in 1974, Prince Asiel and a delegation of Hebrew Israelites from Damona, Israel, and the United States went and were part of the 6th Pan-African Conference in 1974 in Dar es Salaam. So there was a deep connection with Prince Asiel and the people over in Tanzania. So he wanted me to come over here and build a mission for repatriators to come back. So it's very important for y'all to also support the cause of the work. Many people have come over here and they have seen the mission that I've been doing. Everybody know it's legit. It's legit. I have a nice mission compound where different people come and they retreat here in the guest house, but things cost. And one of the things that I'm trying to do, and I want to do it right after this podcast, is catch the bus, and I want to go see a group known as the No Yombo tribe, who says that they've been in this region or the Horn of Africa before the Somalians, and that they are part of the Northern Kingdom of Israel. And it took me over a year to get an exclusive interview with the tribal chiefs. So I need to leave today. I have room and board money and I have food money. I need bus ticket money. The bus ticket money round trip for who I'm connected with is $45 USD. We need the brothers and sisters to support the cause so I can bring this research. And I already told the Scorn Black Man podcast that they can use the video footage research on their show. And it'll be only on their show. And anybody that want to use that will have to go to the Scorn Black Man podcast or myself for permission to use that research, because what a lot of people fail to understand is that Africa is a continent with many nations and tribes. Tanzania alone has 125 tribes. And Hilltop is also a traveling man, not in the Masonic sense, by the way, but he's a traveling man and he goes to different countries and he will tell you that some areas are very hostile. You have areas like what I'm doing, in some places I can literally lose my life because there's information that's on the ground in Africa that certain segments of religion don't want the general public to know. Like if you go to the Sudan right now, we know that Islam is dominating right now southern Sudan, that's Christian. But within Sudan, you have Israelite subclans in Sudan that's in between it all. And through traveling, you have to pass certain areas that can become very hostile if they understand what you're trying to do. Meaning, if they know that you're trying to reveal about the Israelites in these areas, and when you go to these areas, if these Israelites are being oppressed, they don't know if you're going to go back and tell this to the world. So the work that I do sometimes can become hostile. So not only am I bringing y'all the ground footwork research, I'm also risking my life in certain retrospects. So it is very important for y'all to support the call for what I'm doing over here. Hallelujah. Let's continue on.
Make sure y'all support the Mighty Hebrew, man. Y'all see the Cash App right there in front of y'all. Support the brother his boots on the ground in Tanzania, all over Tanzania, traveling Africa. Like you say, Africa got 54 countries. It's a continent. People don't realize that. People really think Africa is just like a country. No, it's a continent with 54 countries. You could fit 5 United States, 5.5 United States of America, almost 6 inside the whole continent of Africa. So it's very big. Brother Doug, you through with your questions, or you got more questions?
No, go ahead, shoot some. Unless y'all want to get into the presentation.
You got, maybe my son want to say something real quick. You got a question? You got a comment? I'll put on mute. Put on mute for you.
Nah, I ain't really got too many questions, but I do have one question that I've been yeah, I do. I have one question that I've been thinking about lately. This cosmic thing, right? That you've been talking about with the and you were saying like it's like a cosmic thing. Explain that to me.
I think you mean the word cosmic. That's more
Yeah.
like talking about. Mute your mic, son. Okay. Cosmic is like the cosmos, so to say, like your solar system, the Mars, Jupiter, Venus, Neptune, the sun, the moon, the stars. So, or outer space, so to say. So, what we teach over here at the Mighty Hebrew University, we don't start time based on the walk of the physical man that you see today, or the young son that you see yourself in the mirror. We start time when we were more celestial, so to say, versus terrestrial, or more heavenly, so to say. So when we say that, or we say cosmogenesis, we're talking about the genesis or the beginning of us and in the cosmos. And when we say anthropogenesis, we're seeing now the manifestation, substance, and culture that comes from us now being physical on earth. So when you look at your body, picture it like your mind is the cosmos, and your body is the anthropology or the physical structure. Before the body, this existed. In the book of Jeremiah, chapter 1, verse 3, we see Jeremiah, his Hebrew name is Yirmiyahu. We see Yahweh, the tetragrammaton, some people pronounce Yahweh. We see Yahweh saying, before you was in your mother's womb, I knew thee. I sanctified thee to be a prophet unto the nations. So the Most High saying he knew Jeremiah before he was in the womb of his mother, that means that Jeremiah existed in the cosmic realm, okay, before he came into the physical, or what we know in the tree of life system, or the Sephardic tree of life. We see the Keter, which is the crown, which is the mind, or the heavens, the Shamayim. And then you see the Mohut, or the earth plane, or the Eretz, the Eratazah, which is the manifestation and substance from the mind, the subjective, the objective, the in, the out. You see what I'm saying? So you have to have, if you put two batteries in a remote control, you have to have a negative and a positive. Look at it like that. The cosmic realm, the physical realm. The positive battery, the negative battery. My mind, my body. The yin, the yang. The inverter, the horizontal. So they both exist hand in hand. So for us to really understand ourselves, we have to understand our cosmological origins and our anthropological origins. In religion, it's more or less just your anthropological origin, and you know nothing about your cosmic origins. And even when they deal with your physical origins, it's still from a European understanding versus your ancestors. So I hope I answered that question. Where you at, Don Yahuda?
Yeah, that answered the question. That actually goes into when you was talking about in Genesis where the Most High separated the nations unto the count of the nation of Israel, right? The 12 tribes. Doesn't that correlate with the cosmos and the zodiac, things of that nature?
It can be, absolutely, because we see this with Jacob having a dream about the sun, moon, and 11 stars. We see that. So We see this absolutely because hold on, y'all. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, y'all. We see this with okay, there we go. I'm sorry. Because I'm looking at the comments, so I can also come in and chime in. Again, I want to give a shout out to my son. You know, it's very important that we teach our sons whatever we acknowledge. My son is 15 years old, very educated young brother, my biological son. We got in the building with us, Prince Shar Adonai Zadok. I named him Adonai Zadok, which means in ancient Hebrew, our righteous Lord. So that's what his name means. So, you know, I'm glad that, and I need everybody to know in the comments, don't make no nasty comments. You know, keep y'all nasty comments to yourselves because I did something honorable by bringing my son here. He don't need to see all that. He only 15 years old. He don't need to see all that. What he need to see is positivity. So I need to let y'all know that. So getting back to the point, and even if we disagree, it's something called we can agree to disagree. And one of the things that we see is the ego. And that's what got us in trouble, is our ego. Because a lot of people think they have a certain amount of knowledge. But as Prince Asiel told me before he passed away, if the knowledge that you have can't build a structure for our people, then what does it mean? We can have all the abstract knowledge, but if you can't build off of what we're talking about, see, we have built what we acknowledge. As a prince in the kingdom of Yah, in Damona, Israel, Northeastern Africa, and over in East Africa, we have things that we build. We have a small spiritual village retreat where people can come over if they want to decide to repatriate and leave the confines of America. Because remember, we know the fall of America is at hand. We can't get away from that. And we know that other nations on the earth, they always patronize their own people. They come into the United States, for instance, the Chinese, they're coming to the United States. They are coming to our communities. They'll build Chinese stores and they'll generate money. Okay. And then from there, send that money back to their own people. So what I want to do is not only create generational wealth, so when I pass away, I can give this to my children, but also I want my children to continue on the mission to help also benefit the nation. So not only am I developing over here generational wealth for my children, so when they know when I pass away, they got this over here in Africa, right? And then at the same time, the nation itself have something to lean on, even though they may come through my sons and my daughters. You understand what I'm saying? But it's something there that they can see that they can build. This is why I have so much admiration and the highest respect for our people in Damona, Israel. And as I said before, a lot of these cats on social media that disagree, they never sat around real elders. Imagine, once again, as I said before, imagine the Shaolin monk without the abbot. That's what you see a lot of these people on social media is about. They slander other people's information, but then when I ask them, who were your elders that taught you? They have no elders. How can you be respected in the community if you don't have those before you that tutelaged you in a certain school of thought to help us to advance as a people? So that give a shout out also to the Zakwanim, to the elders that came before us, because in this culture, as Hebrew Israelite sovereign nationals, many of us lost our lives. And one good book to go read is The Impregnable People, written by Prince Gabriel Hagodor. And in that book, it breaks down the pitfalls of building a nation, and the rise of us as a nation. And when you read that autobiography, there were people that literally died in the process of repatriating from the United States, going into Liberia, 20 miles outside of Monrovia, Liberia, to break the nigger from out of our consciousness. And then after that 2.5-year period being in the wilderness of the people, then in 1969, we tread into what we know as Gomorrah, Israel, Northeastern Africa, to build the kingdom of Yah. We have our own schools. We have our own birthing centers. We have our own factories. We have our own produce. We make our own clothes. We have the Akbar Brotherhood School that was born from out of what is known as the Kingdom of Holiness School. We have our own transportation. We do our own set apart feasts. We gave birth to more than 2,000 births by natural birth in something known as the House of Life. This is a major accomplishment. The plagues that were put on the children of Israel in the captivity, we know that 85% of the diseases that plague the United States hit the Black American or foundational Black Americans. 85%. High blood pressure, diabetes, etc., etc. We have virtually eradicated these things. This is how you determine the measurement of a man's worth, through his work. We can be on social media debating. That's fine if we talk about spiritual masturbation or spirit. And when I say spiritual masturbation, I'm talking about intellectually masturbating or stimulating in the abstract sense. But when we talk about the practical, whereas though we can see it, taste it, smell it, hear it, and touch it by the way of the senses, now we on a whole different playing field. Now we dealing with a different ball game. So when some make these negative comments and say what they say, then I challenge you by your work's worth, through your work and measurement, and say, well, what you acknowledge, let's see if it measures in something that we can touch by the way of the senses. You see, that's where the challenge comes in. No more excuses about what we used to be or what we know. I want to see what you build. I want to see if that information that you believe in is building a social structure for people. That's what I challenge. So let's keep it positive, because one thing that always defeats the argument is the work's worth, through work and measurement. That's what I want to see. I don't want to see nobody talking about, well, you know, your God is wrong and my God is right. Well, okay, well, show me what your God manifests. Show me that you're God. Show me that you can build with what you believe in. First, it just be hot air, so it can keep going into this cycle of nothingness. And we can keep pointing our finger. My mother told me, you point one finger, 7 come back to you. I want to see what you built, because everybody see what I'm building. So I want to see what you building. And then we can debate the measurement of if that works for us. And thus far, what we have built over here is working well with us. And we still are in progress, because it is a process. So we continue on. Hallelujah.
And also, I want to speak on that too, because here on the Scoring Black Man podcast, what we do is open the platform on our series called the Controversial and Deep Biblical Breakdown series, where we allow brothers and sisters to come over here and present information that is not the status quo for most so-called African Americans who came into the truth and knowledge by way of camps or other social media platforms. So with that being stated, you're going to have brothers like Prince Charlandine on here breaking down things such as cosmogenesis and anthropogenesis. You're going to have other brothers like Malachi Maccabee on here. You're going to have brothers like Shalal Shalom and so forth. Why? Because iron sharpens iron. If you only have one mode of information, how do you know, or how can you compare that to other information and know that the information you have is exact and correct? How can you do a diligent research and study if you don't have other lines of information to study against or with? So this is why we bring on these brothers and sisters on this platform, particularly under this particular podcast series, so they can present the information to the people. It's your job, like it says in the New Testament, to study to show yourself approved. You're supposed to go and listen to this information, and then you're supposed to go back and fact check it for yourself. And if it resonates with your spirit, then you go ahead and build off of that. And if not, like they say, eat the fruit, spit out the seed. So with that being said, you don't really have to explain yourself, Prince, because anybody that has any knowledge of who you are, you have a very long tenured history. You've done a diligent work within the community. A lot of brothers and sisters have been following you for over a decade, particularly here in social media, without even knowing the spider web effect you have behind the scenes when it comes to building up Hebraic communities, when it comes to
30 years.
Right. So this is not something that you just learned and, trying to go out and teach the people. 30 years is longer than probably a quarter or so of the people that's watching this feed today. That's older than them. So with that being stated, respectfully saying, listen to the information, take it back, study it. He gives you sources. He gives you the breakdowns of the information. He doesn't hold back anything. He's not scared to tell you what he stands on and what his ideology is. So with that being said, go back and look at the information, study it for yourself. And if it resonates, like I said, then build on that. If not, listen, we can set up something to where we can have a cordial dialogue here on the Black Man, the Scoring Black Man podcast, where y'all could talk about the differences and why there is a difference or a misunderstanding, or maybe even enlighten somebody who don't know the information.
And let me back off that real quick. Brother Dunn, very well said. When I started the whole podcast, the Scoring Black Man podcast, the Scoring Black Man podcast series, the whole channel was never going to be your traditional Israelite channel. We got the Scoring Black Man podcast series. That where me and Brother Don Yehuda, we attack serious issues within the Black and urban communities from a street and biblical perspective. Then me and Brother Don Yehuda said, hey man, we're going to start controversial and deep biblical breakdown series. Now, controversial and deep biblical, it's self-explained. We're not going to have people here going to be saying your usual one West or your usual whatever. You're going to hear all kind of different Hebrew Israelites, all different kind of doctrines. You might hear Old Testament Hebrew Israelites like Brother Body Hebrew. You might hear New Testament only. You may hear Israelites like ourselves that believe in the Old Testament, New Testament, and the Apocrypha. You may hear Israelites that don't believe in the Bible. They believe in the WASP. You're going to hear a whole bunch of different avenues of thoughts. And this is what I noticed about a lot of Israelites are just like Christianity and Christians, man. They are afraid of their doctrine being challenged. And it's being challenged just by you listening to somebody else's doctrine. You know what I'm saying? Because you ain't did your own study. You hide behind your in Christianity, they hide behind their pastors. In the Israelite community, they hide behind the elders, you know what I'm saying? They hide behind Bishop Nathaniel or whoever, you know what I'm saying, just to be, you know what I'm saying? I ain't trying to call them out, but I'm saying they hide behind leaders. And they don't know what the hell they talking about. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about not the leaders, but the people. So you're going to have different trains of thoughts. You're going to have to, you know what I'm saying? You're going to have to study. You know what I'm saying? You're going to get uncomfortable. That's what it's all about. You're going to get uncomfortable. Just like when you go home and you tell mama, hey, we the Israelites. And she get all upset. No, I'm a Gentile. She's uncomfortable. And you're going to get uncomfortable being an Israelite because you're going to know that, hey, just because you was taught one thing don't mean it was right. Here go another train of thought. Now put that together. Iron sharpens iron, just like Brother Don Yehuda said. So with that being said, man, we could go into whatever y'all want to. I don't know if you got another question. We could get into the presentation or whatever.
Yeah, let's knock the presentation out because I know he got a lot of information he want to get through. Because We already said it. We might have to do a part 3, you know. But with that being said, let's get into let's get into the presentation right now, and you know, knock out some more of this deep, controversial, and biblical thought right now.
No, not to change the subject, but I'm sitting up here. 2 things I see. Don Yahuda look just like Ed Lover, right? Right. He looks just like Ed Lover. That's number 1, right? And number 2, man, my son look just like me. Oh
Yes,
my gosh. Because I'm looking at, I'm looking at my laptop as I'm talking to y'all, and I'm letting it play, but it's low, so it don't give no feedback. And I'm looking, I'm like, oh my God, that boy look just like me.
All praises.
But you do
Hey,
look
you
like
could.
you do look like that cover from
Hey, maybe
your
I should
MTV
go.
rap.
Yo, maybe I should go impersonate him up in New York. Maybe I get some dollars or something out of it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Hey, I ain't seen no Ed Lover impersonators.
Absolutely. So I see that here. The image of the book that you see above is called In Search of the Cradle of Civilization. Let's start right here. Hallelujah again. Giving all praise and honor to Yahweh, the supreme, intelligent, powerful one of our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Those striving for righteousness' sake, I say into the family, Shalom Aleichem. It's definitely an honor and a privilege once again to be on the Scorn Black Man podcast with my man Hilltop, Don Yahuda, and my son here with us today, Prince Adonai Zadok. Let's get into this brief essay that I put together on this book, In Search of the Cradle of Civilization. I would also like to give a shout out to Professor George Fergenstein and Shahaz Kant and David Furley, who actually read over my essay as it pertains to this book that they wrote back in 2015. I wrote this, and this is what I said about this book that they wrote. I say, contrary to the school book notion, the real cradle of civilization was not Kemet, Egypt, Kawash, Kush, or Kush, Ethiopia, nor Sumer, but the greater Indus Valley. In the book below, in the book above, or the book above is a must-read, Yisrael, which completely revisions ancient history and cite the latest archaeological, geological, and linguistic evidence showing that the original Edenian Shemitic Indus Valley had a highly evolved Tamal Nadu, Lumerian, Atala, Atlantean, Ivri, Hebrew culture that has influenced the world decisively and still has much to teach us today. The book goes into the ancient Edenian Shemitic text called the Rig Veda. And now scholars are saying that this text is much older than the Sun, and that this book, In Search of the Cradle of Civilization, decodes the profound spiritual wisdom hidden in its symbols, metaphors, and myths. The 3 authors of this book also unravel the astonishing mathematical, let me get it right, and astronomical code hidden in the Edenian Lumerian, Atlantean Hebraic, Indus Valley Vedic hymns. The author's George Fergenstein, PhD, is a world-known religious historian and yoga researcher. Subhas Kant, PhD, is a Sanskrit scholar and professor of computer engineering at the Louisiana State University. And David Friley, OMD, OMD is the director of the American Institute of Vedic Studies in New Mexico. This book shows us new evidence that the earliest civilization is in fact in Rajasthan, India, dating 50,000 BCE. Also, significant new sites have been discovered, such as the great city of Dolavar and Gujarat, which is one of the largest ports in the ancient world. Excavations have started in Rock Gohi, west of Delhi, and a city that was much larger than the Mohenjo-daro and Harapparia, from which the original Hebrews came from. And take note of these words, what a connection. Hebrew, Ivri, Harabu, Harapu, Harapparia, and Hebrew, right? And historians like Sir Godfrey Higgins have pointed out to us, right? Pointed out to us, names were all derived from the ancient Hebrew Indo-Sanskrit dialect, which means sons of a fall. The Eastern's Bible Dictionary states that a connection to Safar is, in fact, the Coptic name for India. Also, our forefather Josephus connected it with Kafan, an Indian river, and in part of Asia adjoining to it. Antiquity of the Jews 1:6. It was India that created and, in fact, colonized Kemet and Kush, not the other way around. This is why the ancient Indus Valley dynasties look just like those of the pharaohs of ancient Kemet. The only difference is that the ancient Indus Valley dynasties existed long before the Egyptian dynasties. It existed at a time when Kemet was, in fact, underwater. Okay? Where am I at? Okay, underwater. Eberites, or Hebrews, also known as Yadavas, were a very large tribe that came from out of the ancient Indus Valley and was also known as the Harapparians. Our ancestors were speaking an ancient Indo-Hebrew dialect called Tamal in Sanskrit, and it should be noted that Aramaic originated what we now today know as modern Afghanistan and Pakistan. And both of these countries were once a part of India, Persia included. Also, there was a district of India called Ori Anana on the Juma, which many say that our forefather Abraham came from in India. There is an Indian historian by the name of Kutikat Poru Sotuma that believes that our forefather Abraham was driven from out of India when he states the Aryans, unable to defeat the Asuras, the mercantile caste that once ruled in the Indus Valley or Harapparians, spent so much years fighting covertly against the Asuras, such as destroying their huge systems of irrigation, lakes, causing destructive flooding, that Abraham and his kindred just gave up and marched to West Asia. Those Hebrews are Eberites or Harapparians that didn't leave, as the family of Abraham were driven into South India and placed into a wicked caste system and became known as the Black Untouchables or the Dalits, which is in fact a Hebrew word that means to make thin or to crush. Also, ancient sites have recently been found in the east of India as far as Lucknow. Geographers in India have done numerous studies verifying the course of the Sarasvati River. Note, some Hindu Brahmanistic traditions state that this river was named after Abraham's wife, Sarah, and it means Awasti, Lady Sarah. And the civilization along it and have produced an entire ton on it. When the reader of this gets a chance, go on Google and type in 1, the secret book of Zion, and you will see that this book opens up in its first stanza, chapter, speaking about 300 million years ago. This book is thousands of years older than the Medunetta. 2, the chronology of the Brahmins, which traces back to 311 trillion, 40 billion years ago. So now we can go to some of other sources that people can get. Go to the next slide. Let's look at some of the sources that people can go to. You can go to How Deep Are the Roots of Indian Civilization? Archaeology Answers by B.B. Lau. You can also go to the Aryan Home, right? And you can get that. And that breaks down other source materials debunking the Aryan invasion myth. You can go to Tony Joseph's book, Early Indians. And if you look on the cover, as you can see, this is what they originally looked like. Look at this, the woman with the woolly hair, the thick lips. Look at her structure. This breaks down who were the original Harapparians. Did the Aryans migrate to India, which in fact they were originally a black caste system? And then the question also is noted, when did the caste system begin? That's what the book by Tony Joseph, Early Indians, is talking about. You can also go to the next one, the Vedic people, invaders, question mark, immigrants, question mark, or indigenous, question mark. This has much evidence of archaeology and literature by also B.B. Lau. Very excellent book. Next slide. So now let's get into some ancient artifacts, because a lot of people say, well, you're saying that India is older than Kemet. Absolutely. Let me show you. So when we look at this right here, what do we have? We have something known as the Warka. And when you study the Warka go back to 35,000 BCE. Here's the evidence right here, as we can see, new archaeological sites of the Gulf of Cambay, India. And if we study this information, and y'all can type it up, and this was roughly around March of 2003 that they found these artifacts, and it's called the Warka, which is DWARKA. That goes back to 35,000 years ago. Go to the next slide. We also have different artifacts, some going back 35,000 years ago, 9,000 years ago, right? 10,000 years ago, 12,000 years ago. And we have the Bambika artifacts. We have the Eldika caves. We have many different artifacts in the Indus Valley. You went somewhere else. I don't see the I think you left from the PowerPoint. Can you see it?
God damn it.
No problem. Take your time.
My bad. I'm trying to find. Let me go down.
That's fine.
Try to find. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah,
no, it's no.
At the ancient
it's about to come up.
Oops, article. There you go. There we
right
go.
There. So we see these different ancient artifacts at different dispensations of time in the Indus Valley. Why are they not letting us know about this? And when you look at it, look at the structure. Look at the structure of these artifacts. Let's go to the next slide. And what do we have? You read this from the bottom to the top. So we got Barana, right? And what do you see? You see Hakra. This is pre-Haraparian civilization, going back 9,450 BCE. And it's funny that we identify the last flood or Noah's flood 9,564 BCE. And right after that, this is when you start to see the pre-Haraparian civilization. And then we also see that, you know, that the whole world or the whole earth, correctly, the whole land was speaking one language, and that the people came from Kadim, which is the east or the Indus Valley, and they found a plain called Sinar, which is Sumer in Mesopotamia. And when we understand what we know today as the Ramayana and War, it aligns with Genesis 11. So you're reading the Hakra or the Hakra pre-Haraparian civilization, which was 9,450 BCE, going into 7,950 BCE. Then you start to get into the early Haraparian civilization, roughly around 6,450 BCE. And then it starts to mature more through emanation, roughly around 4,950 BCE. And then you see the total maturity of Haraparia roughly around 2,750 BCE. Okay? And this is definitely supported by, this antiquity is supported by, you know, archaeological astronomy and archaeological genetics. And we see this. And we see the archaeological artifacts from different cultural levels of this area. So we started from 9,450 BCE to 2,750 BCE. Next slide. So now we in the book, right? The History of the Earth and Its Cycles by E.W. Preston. Excellent book. And we have here a summary, so to say, of Atlantis in the fourth root epic or race. The summary of man's date and events concerning the Atlantean race, fourth root race. So we're at 5 million BCE to 10,000 BCE. So if you look at the appendix on the left side, we see between 5 to 4 million BCE, we see the Romaho race founded the Ashanti, meaning in that area. Remember I said earlier that the Romahos came from the Madagascar, Sumatra, Tanzania area, went into West Africa, found the Atlantean root epic, which spread it to South America. I said that, and I showed last week when we got into the book, Ancient Lutea, Lost Atlantis. I think, matter of fact, let me get that book so I can read the description of the Romaho race. And as you can see, I got the book. It's called Legends of Atlantis and Lost Lemuria by W. Scott Elliott. So let's deal with the description of these Romahos so we can get an idea of what's being defined to us. Hallelujah. So this is what it says about the Romaho race and how they looked, who they were. It says here on page number 29, the Romaho race came into existence between 4 and 5 million years ago. Stop. So we see in this book right here, it's clearly aligning itself with the information that's in a totally different book. So we see the Romaho race came into existence between 4 and 5 million years ago, at which period large portions of the great southern continent of Lemuria still existed, while the continent of Atlantis had not assumed the proportions it ultimately attained. It was upon the spur of this Lemurian land that the Romaho race was born. Roughly, it may be located at latitude 7 north and longitude 5 west, which a reference to any modern atlas would show to lie on the Ashanti coast, meaning West Africa, Ghana area today. It was a hot moist country where huge antediluvian animals live in reedy swamps and date forests. The Ramorhos were a dark race, their complexion being a sort of mahogany black. Their height in these early days was about 10 to 12 feet, truly a race of giants. So the Ramorhos of 5.5 million BCE would be the antediluvian Hebrews that were Elohim that embodied themselves in human form, which became known in the archaic records as the Ramorhos. And post-diluvian, we are known as Yisrael. So we see about the Ramorhos, and this was during the late, which you would consider the late Pesseline period. It was during the late Pesseline period. Let me blow up my screen so I can see. Oh, there we go. So I can see a little better. Okay, let me get back here. Yes, during the Pesseline period. Then you get around 300 million BCE. We see the first archaic recording of a glacial age. But the modern day scientists, they try to say that you don't see no evidences of man. But I already established the fact in the last presentation, that's a lie. Then you get around 3 million to 2 million BCE. Now you see in the Tavakles. The Tavakles were the ones that started to spread throughout South America and Asia. So now you're seeing the first, which you will call Native Americans in the Americas, roughly around 2.5 million BCE. Then you get between 2 million and 1 million BCE. You see the pre-Toltecs. The pre-Toltecs started to greatly to increase in population in South America, and they started to spread throughout Mexico and Peru. Then you get around, also 1 million BCE. You get the golden age of the pre-Toltecs. Now you're seeing the great empire of the Golden Gate take place. And then you also see these tongue skulls that spreading throughout Africa, not Africa, around China, roughly around 900,000 BCE. Now we're in the Aryan, not the Aryan, the Atlantean root epic, but at the same time, simultaneously borning the Aryan or the noble root epic. And you're starting to see in 850,000 BCE, the pre-Shemitic tribes before Shem that was founded by a man by the name of Shemjaza. And this is who Noah named his son Shem after, a pre-existing ancestor that created the pre-Shemitic tribes known as Shemjaza. And which you see among the pre-Toltecs in this area, roughly around 850,000 BC, was the rise of black magic. You see in the rise of this sorcery, so that's taking place. And you're seeing these pre-Shemites fighting these pre-Toltecs to stop sorcery. And because of the brain power that was being used at the time, it caused a flood to take place, or the very first flood, 800,000 BCE. And you see in the partial up, or the breaking up of the Atlantean continent, and some that broke up created what was known as the Ice Age. And then from there, roughly around 600,000 BCE, you're seeing the pre-Arcadians and the pre-Mongolian races being formed. And then you see in that our pre-Shemitic ancestors, they're rising in power in Atlantis or Patala. Now we got the people on the proper track. Remember I said earlier that there were 70 Elohim. That 70 Elohim would be considered that formed into this pre-Shemitic tribe. That's where it was born from out of, through the Ramorhos. Now, as we continue to continue on within this presentation, we see roughly around 400,000 BCE. you're seeing the transference with theosophists called the White Lodges of Kemet, or what they call pre-dynastic Kemet. So you see in 210,000 BCE, the first divine dynasty. And the first divine dynasty was founded by a group of people from the Indus Valley that came into Egypt, known as the Scorpion King, not the Scorpion King, excuse me, the Nagas. The Nagas were known in Sanskrit as the serpent people. So when you see the Nasut or the pharaohs wearing these cobras on their head, it was a reenactment or a reminder of those Nagas that sat on the throne of Gurbansi, which later became known as Kemet, roughly 210,000 BCE. And the Nagas also became introduced by foreigners of South America known as the Nacals. The Nacals had what was known as Lower Gurbansi. And there was a war that took place with the Nagas and the Nacals. And because of the dark art or black magic being transferred from South America to Africa, there was this war that took place. And now you get the second flood, 200,000 BCE. Now you see Atlantis or Patala being broken into two islands. You have Ruta and you got Datia. And the pre-Totekian Empire was on the island of Ruta, where the dark art was crazy. That's why when you see post-Diluvian Toltecs and all that, what did they use the pyramids for? And they were sacrificing their children and taking the hearts from out of the chest because they learned this art that was trickled down from pre-dynastic Toltecs. Are y'all with me? Do y'all hear me? Am I not melting this microphone right now? Are y'all with me?
We all in, Prince. We all in.
So again, see, I'm giving you a chronology. I'm giving you the archaic records, which are also known as the occult record summary with the scientific evidence. So then 150,000 BCE, we see in that Gurbansi or Kemet, later called Kemet, is reopening by pre-Toltecs and pre-Akkadians, now starting the second divine dynasty. The Sahara Desert was still a sea at the time. It wasn't the Sahara Desert yet. It was still a sea. And then you get 100,000 BCE. Now you're getting the rise of the pre-Akkadian Empire. They overthrow our pre-Shemitic ancestors, and they started to get grossly into the black magical arts. And then they started to practice it on people. And, you know, human sacrifice, etc., etc. 80,000 BCE, you see some of our pre-Shemitic ancestors migrate to the Gobi. 75,025 BCE, you get the third flood. You get Datia completely destroyed, which leaves the island of Ruta in Atlantis, which Plato calls Poseidonis or Poseidonus, right? And you also see the rising and breakdown of the Neanderthalian into Cro-Magnus, and you also seeing, you know, the descendants of the Romanos going into Europe, and they became known as Professor Sheikh Anti Drup or Sheikh Anti Diop would call the Grimaldi man. He calls it the Grimaldi man. And also, let me see, hold on. Then you get, because I lost my page. So hold on for 1 second, y'all. Let me get back to it. Okay, this is power, y'all. See, they thought we would never be able to get this information, but we live in the Brett on the Scorn Black Man podcast, giving you the information. So we see now 35,000 BCE. You're seeing the descendants of the Tavaklis even migrating to Europe. You're seeing the Cro-Magnon type in Europe, the high type. You see in the artistic Grimaldi Negroid type in Africa and Europe. You see in the Turanian civilization, or these black Turanian civilizations in Chaldea take place roughly around 20,000 BCE. You also see in the end of the glacial age, and then you see in 14,000 BCE. Now you see the descendants of the pre-Toltecs until, post the beginning of the post-Toltecian civilizations. They form in the great empires in Peru, Central America. You see it, the conquering by the Aztecs. You see it, all this going on. And then you see the last flood and the Neolithic age coming roughly around 9,564 BCE. Next slide. Now you see a map showing that submersions of Tamar Nadu. You see Madagascar is connected to what we know as Sumatra. And during this time, you see also Ameru. And if you were in Tanzania, you can go to an area known as Arusha, Tanzania, and they also have a mountain known as Meru to remind them of the original submerged Meru that became known as ancient Lemuria, or the submerged Tamar Nadu, which had the Panyan kingdom. You had all this going on at this time. Next slide. We see a close-up of Kumari Kingdom, which the ancient people of the Indus Valley call ancient Lemuria. Again, we see Madagascar also connected. Why you think when you study the flora and fauna of Madagascar and India is similar? Why you think you find the lemur monkeys in Madagascar, you can also find them in the Indus Valley? Why? Because at one time, even though it wasn't called the Indus Valley then, the ancient Tamar Nadu or Lemuria's capital was the Indus Valley, and lemur monkeys traveled from Madagascar to the Indus Valley and back and forth, as we can clearly see. Why? Because it was a mass of land there. Hallelujah. So now, if we understand, next slide, if we understand the Sumerian civilization, then we understand that it originated from the Exodus from Lanka in South India. So it is obvious that the Luge stories that we know are related to one another. And we know the re-narrated stories of Marungan and Sumeria go back to the Indus Valley. Next slide. So when we study we can clearly see, right, that the Sumerians were actually the Lankian refugees of the Ramayanian War. Now, doesn't Genesis chapter 11 make much more sense that the people from the east came and found the plain known as Shinar or Sumer? So the Sumerians were actually Hebrews known in the Indus Valley as the Yadavas that ran from the Ramayanian War. The ancient Sumerians were in fact Hebrews from the Indus Valley, which in turn migrated into Mesopotamia. And what do we have here? We have the post-Diluvian civilizations that rose through the line of Noah, not all nations. So we see the Indus, Gandhis, the Harapari and the Vedic civilizations. And then we can clearly see that it migrated into the Tigris and Euphrates, the ancient Mesopotamian and Babylonian societies. And then we started to push into West Asia or Northeastern Africa to the Nile and ancient Kemet in them areas like that. Next slide. So we see the Indus river civilizations right here that we clearly see, right? And don't we see Haraparia and Mohindo Daro? When you study the Haraparian civilization and the pre-Haraparian going back to the Hafra, it's way older than Kemet. Next slide. Look, we see Haraparia once again. We see it again in the location where the actual children of Israel's ancestors, the Yadavas, come from Ada. Next slide. So let's study up on the Naga and the origin of the word Naga or the meaning of it. And it has the same root as Nakash that you see inside the Genesis account or the Bereshit account, which they translate as serpent, which we know is enchanter, whisperer. And now doesn't the movie Queen of the Dam make sense? More and more when you study the Natasha, the Queen of the Dam that the late Aaliyah played as that same Nakash root or Naga root, which in Hinduism and Buddhism and Jainism is a member of the class of mythical semi-divine beings, half human, half cobra, because the word Naga in Sanskrit means serpent. They are a strong, handsome species who can assume either a wholly human or wholly serpentine form and are potentially dangerous but often beneficial to humans. You can find that in the Botanica.com Naga Hindu Mythology Botanica. Look at what we see. The Nagas of ancient India. Do we not see this is in stone? Half human, half cobra, right? Now I'm about to show you in the next slide. We're about to see what is known as the Hong Sang and the Tiwa Naku pharaohs of 7,500 BCE of China. This is before post-Diluvian Kemet. This is the end of pre-dynastic Kemet. Huh? Look at the pharaohs of ancient China that existed before the dynastic people of Kemet that come through the sons of Ham. Okay, next slide. So we have evidence, we have mind-boggling new evidence of Australian Aborigines and Dangle mysteries that prove that the Indian Hindu links of all civilizations. And as we can see, we have the Australian Aborigines following ancient traditions of today passed on their ancestors. And when you study the Australian Aboriginals, they teach that they go back to the Indus Valley. That's what they teach. This ain't nothing that I'm making up. This is something that they say from out of their own mouth. Next slide. Look at the appearance of the ancient Indus Valley women. It might be hard to swallow, but the darkest people don't come from out of Africa. The darkest people come from out of India. They be so dark, their skin color be blue-black, and they be so dark that you can't even see their hairline. That's how dark they are. So now we have right here called Bene Yisrael, ancient black Jews of India. And in the yellow, I have highlighted some very important commentary that must be examined. This commentary to me needs to be examined. It needs to be shown as a source of reference when we define the history. So let me blow this up. Okay. So in the first highlight, we see a statement very important, right? It says, let me put my camera back on. The term Yadava now covered many traditional pastel castes, such as the horrors of the Hindu belt, the Gavili of, I can't see that word, and because it only blow up by a certain amount, and the Gula, and the Korna of Tamil Nadu, in the Hindu belt, Ahar, Gawala, and Yadava are often used synonymous. The next slide says, which is very important, it says, the tribe of Krishna had a name, which is very remarkable. Captain Wilford says the Yadavas, his own tribe and nation, talking about Abraham, right? Excuse me, Krishna, I mean, his own tribe and nation were doomed to destruction for their sins, like the descendants of Yehuda or Huda, which is the true pronunciation of Judah. Mr. Marcus says the Yadavas were the most. Now, this is very important to understand now the real meaning behind the Eastern Ethiopians and the Western Ethiopians. So the Yadavas were the most vulnerable immigrants from India. They were the blameless and pious Ethiopians. When Homer mentions and calls the remotest of mankind, part of them says the old Hindu writers remained in this country, which is the Eastern Ethiopians, and hence we read of two Ethiopian nations, the Western and the Oriental. Some of them lived far to the east, and they are the Yadavas, who stayed in India, while the others resided far to the west. That next line, this immigrating tribe of Yadu or Huda or Yadavas, we shall find of the first importance, for they are no other than the Israelites or the Jews. So they letting you know. And here goes some Yadavas that we see below. And when you look at these Yadavas, look at these are black men, right? Darker than me and you. And all the highlighting shows us as we continue to build down this matrix, we see that the Yahud or Yahud of the Hindus long before the Jews of Western Syria. So what they're saying is that these Hebrew Yadavas migrated from the east, or those that stayed in the east, they became known historically as Eastern Ethiopians. Those that left from the Indus Valley, which is Abraham and all of them, they became known as Western Ethiopians through the classical Greek writers, okay? And they became known before the Israelites correctly, or Western Syria could have taken the name from one of the sons of Jacob called Judah, a name which cannot have been first derived from him, because it is clear that they had this name long before he was born. His grandfather Isaac having born it. The word Jew is a mere Anglicization, and the word Hudi or Udi, and more correctly, the Hindu's name, come from where it would. It is most probable that it came from the tribe of Uda, and as the head of the tribe seems to have been known by that name. And then when you go to the next slide, okay, let me see. Okay, no, it's fine. Okay, so when you go to the next slide, it gives you pictures of how some of the people looked. Okay, these are some of the Yadavas. You also see similarities in Hebrew and Kashmirian Kabbalistic terminologies. You see the names on one side in Hebrew and then the other side in Kashmirian, and it's very much the same. And then you see the Todah, Tamal, Dravidian man, right? And we also see down the bottom the different Yadavas, or the what we know as the Black Untouchables, the different looks that they have, right? Next book, not that one, but the next one after that, which is a very good book, is known as Forbidden History, which is edited by J. Douglas Keaton. And he goes into the Indus Valley. If he goes on the next page, we see in India 30,000 BCE. You see what I'm saying? And the question is, do the roots of Indian culture lay drowned beneath the Indian Ocean? This was written by archaeologist David Lewis. Now, here's something interesting. The next slide. Now, this is a peer-reviewed document called Ancient Medieval Modern, right? And if you go to the next slide, this was Ancient India, a textbook of class 11, okay, by R.S. Sharma, right? And this is PDF written. I mean, not PDF, peer reviewed, read. And I want to read, right, this paragraph. Listen to what it says about ancient ore. Now, I teach that there are two ores. You have the ore of Mesopotamia, roughly around 700 to 800 BCE. And then you have the ore in the Indus Valley going back 7,500 BCE. Let's see if there's a peer-reviewed writing about ancient ore in the Indus Valley. It says here, in this period, we come across three types of villages in South India. 1, Ur. 2, Shabha. And 3, Nagamram. Ur was the usual type of village inhabited by peasant castes. Heard them say peasant castes, meaning the untouchables, who perhaps held their land in common. It was the responsibility of the religious headmen to collect and pay taxes on their behalf. These villages were mainly found in southern Tamil Nadu. Checkmate. So we have peer-reviewed records saying that there was another ore. That is the ore that I'm saying Abraham comes from. The ore from out of the Indus Valley. When you're reading inside the Bereshit about ore, that is the ore you're reading about, not about the one in Mesopotamia. Go to the next slide. Let's go to a book known as Black Bloodlines, Abraham and the Racial Profiles of the Ancient Hebrews. See, by Calvin R. Evans, right? And one of the things that Calvin R. Evans says in chapter, I believe it's 9, called Judah, I found something very interesting that he says, right? That this couldn't be a forgery. He says, Sir Godfrey Higgins quotes, this is what he says. Mr. Marcus, the Yadavas were the most vulnerable immigrants from India. They were the blameless and pious Ethiopians who Homer mentions and calls the remotest of mankind. Parts of them, says the old Hindu writers, remained, hold on, it says remained, let me see, get it so I can see it, hold on. Okay, where am I at? Okay. Remained in this country, and hence we read of two Ethiopians, the Western and the Orientals. Some of them live far to the east, and they are the Yadavas, who stayed in India, while others resided far from the west. The fact of part of the tribe yet remaining in existence is one of the pieces of circumstances of this kind that I've ground my system. They surpass all written evidence, for they cannot have been forged. Listen again, for they cannot have been forged. This immigrating tribe of Yadavas we shall find of the first importance, for they were none other than the Israelites. Sir Godfrey Higgins, Anticalypsis, Volume 1, London, 1836, reprinted, Brooklyn, A&B Books, published 1992, page 392. So now we go to the next slide. Let's see what classical writers say. If y'all don't believe what I say, let's go into the history of the Jews by the Israelite scholar Flavius Josephus, 37 to 100 ACE. He wrote that the Greek philosopher Aristotle had said these Jews, meaning Israelites, are derived from the Indian philosophers. They are named by the Indians Kanali or Kalani in Book 122. We have Clericus of Soli. He writes, the Israelites descended from the philosophers of India. The philosophers are called in India Kalanians and in Syria Israelites. The name of their capital is very difficult to pronounce. It is called Jerusalem. We got Magasthenes, who was sent to India by Cilicius about 300 years before Jesus or Yeshua or Yahushua, whose accounts from new inquiries are everyday inquire. Additional credit says that the Israelites were an Indian tribe or sect called Kanali. That's an Enicalypsis by Godfrey Higgins, volume 1, page 400. We got Martin Hayne, PhD, wrote in the sacred language, writings and religions of the Paris. The Magi are said to have called their religion Kis Ibrahim, right? Or the way of life of Abraham. They trace their religious books to Abraham, who was believed to have brought them from heaven. That's on page 16. We also can go into the book Moses Yolos Extraterrestres by Mexican author Tamín Doristi. He states, Vladimir was of the opinion that Abraham descended from some of the numerous Brahmin priests who left India to spread their teachings throughout the world. We see that, right? Then we also see, later that they would say that the power or the God arrived from Bratsara, the mountainous region situated midway on the road to India, right? Then Bradaka, a region in ancient Afghanistan, was located, or the locality of the prototypical Israelite or Hebrew nation called Jaguta, also called Or. Listen, there go that word Or Yehuda. Or meant place or town. Therefore, the Bible is correct in stating that Abraham came from Or of the Chaldeans. Chaldean or Chaldean means correctly Chaldiva, holy cause, was not a name of a Pacific ethnicity, but the title of an ancient Hindu Brahminical priestly caste who lived in what are now Afghanistan, Pakistan, and the Indian state of Kashmir, right? So we see all this information, right? We see all this information, right? Go to the next slide. Someone might say, well, is there any, West Africans? Go into the notes, go to the next slide. You can pass that. That's fine. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Right there. So what do we have here? We have a book called Africa and South America. Are they descendants of the Atlanteans? Now, this was written by a Nigerian scholar from Nigeria by the name of Andrew Omisakin, right? He's from Nigeria. And what he shows in this presentation is about the Ramohos. And he goes into the etymology of the word Ramoho. And what does he say in 6.8 etymology of the word Ramoho? Go to the next slide. And his source is by Adiwili, called Black Peoples of the World. It says the first root race of Atlantis was called Ramohos. Now I want to skip down. It says the blackout could therefore be due to an era in the name of the race. We were, however, struck by the similarity between the word va-bohu, right, and the Yoruba word oromola. In each word, we have the reoccurrence of the following letters: R-M-O-A-L. H and Romoho could be I, and Oromo, in the same manner that the Brazilian, I think Janeiro does the same thing in the Brazilian name. So even in the West African traditions, they tell you about the Romos. So I wanted to show that, to show like this is something that's definitely not made up, but this is something that is known by scholars worldwide. I give all praise and honor to Yahweh, the supreme, intelligent, powerful one of our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, those striving for righteousness' sake. I say into the family, Shalom Aleichem. It's definitely an honor and a privilege to be here on the Scorn Black Man podcast. Hallelujah.
Yeah, that was a powerful, powerful bill. Can y'all hear me? Okay. Yeah, that was a powerful bill, Prince. With that being stated, real quick, you brought up something in that presentation about the secret book of Zion. I believe that's how you pronounce it. And you said that was older than the Medu Neter. How come none of the scholars, especially those that's on like Sonetta TV and others, how come they never speak on this book? They always, divert to the Medu Neter and things of that nature, but they never talk about this particular piece of information or this artifact right here. Why is that?
That's an excellent question. I think one of the main reasons is because of the focal point of what Kemet became to the Western world. You got to remember, the Greeks during the Ptolemy era, after the death of Alexander, son of Philip of Macedonia, we see this in the Apocryphal books, roughly around 332 BCE. His kingdom was broken into 4 sections, and one of them was controlled by the Ptolemies. So many of the Greeks or Greek society and Roman society were heavily influenced and tutelaged by ancient Egypt. Hellenism got transferred over to the Roman Empire, roughly around 146 BCE. We also see through the Visigoths, the Vandals, and all the destroy your Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire became known as Western Europe. We see that Western Europe gives birth to the United States. So we see this focal point of Egypt because the Greeks were tutelaged by the Egyptians. And this is why when you deal with any form of Latin and all that, they go directly back to Egypt. And remember, a lot of the Afrocentric scholars were taught under these Eurocentric institutions that were taught by the Egyptians. And when you start talking about these fraternal orders that they're involved in, these, sorority organizations that they're involved in, notice that these sororities are Greek fraternities and sororities. And as I said, these fraternities and sororities were influenced by Egypt. So since it was influenced by Egypt, their focal point becomes Egypt. And what many of them fail to understand is that these Egyptologists, such as your Henry Bressett's, your Petrie's, and not Henry Bress, excuse me, James Henry Bressett, your Petries, your Champollions, all these different guys, your Wallace Budges. A lot of these guys focused on Egypt, and those Egyptologists use Egypt in a form of white supremacy to dominate first Africa in the world scope at large. So when you look at the base of Egyptology, it's predicated on white supremacy. So we can't get around that, even though they use African imagery and art and pottery and things like that. But remember, they call these people in their records dark-skinned Caucasians. This is why when the comedian, what's the comedian's name from Philly? He lived down the street from me.
Kevin Hart.
He from 13th. Kevin Hart. He from 13th area. I'm from 10th area. So Kevin Hart, he wanted to do his comedy over in Egypt, and he had the whole thing lined up. But when that man said that the original Egyptians were black people, they shut his whole tour in Egypt down.
Yeah, I remember that.
Banned him from doing shows over there in Egypt because he said that the original Egyptians were black people. Okay, so it's a disservice to do that. And then you got to remember, because Egypt got many monuments and artifacts and things like that, and we as a people in the United States were a downtrodden people. We looked at that imagery as a hope of kingship and queenship. So we identify with that because that's what was spoon-fed to us. But now when you type up on your Google, and the listening audience can do it right now, just type up, is the Indus Valley older than Egypt? And watch everything pop up. And now you're seeing archaeologists and anthropologists and paleontologists, y'all who don't know this, they're saying now the Indus Valley is older than Egypt. So all these years, and give a shout out also to Sister Neftali and her show. She got a show called Israelite New School of Thought. And I gave her some notes to use, proving that the Indus Valley was older than Kemet, and she used them same notes and showed them notes to Professor Jabari Azazi at Sinetta Studios, and he couldn't refute that information because real scholars know that the Indus Valley is older than Kemet. They know that. The only ones that's saying that is because they feel as though when they read about the people of Kemet saying that they source go back to the south, they think that they're speaking about going deeper into the body of Africa, into like Uganda and all them different areas. Versus the south, they talking about Tamal Nadu amongst the Indus Valley. Why you think when the Nasut, they sat on the throne, they had the cobra? And when we start to deal with the flora, fauna things, the cobra is indigenous to the Indus Valley. And it was imported to Egypt. And that's why when you look at the artifacts of pre-dynastic Kemet, you see these images of pharaohs going all the way back to China, 7,500 BCE. And I showed that tonight. And I gave y'all the names, and y'all can look it up, and you'll clearly see like how these pharaohs in China are older than the dynastic pharaohs. The dynastic pharaohs start at Menes the First. Menes the First in their records is known as Namer. In our records, he's known as Mitzrayim or Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim in Hebrew the embanker of the sea. The embanker of the sea was Menes the First, or Namur. He is the one that historically embanked the Nile River system. You see how the biblical record is aligning with the historical accounts of things. The problem is how we've been introduced to the scripture. The way that most people are introduced to the scriptures is through doctrine. So if your mind state has been engulfed in a doctrine, when you look at the scripture, you already been pre-programmed. I use an example. Let's play a game. If I say to a person, if God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believe in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. What am I saying, Don Yahuda, right now? If you never heard of the Bible, nothing, what am I saying?
I mean, if you never heard of the Bible, I mean, most people interpret that as Christ coming down to save all mankind.
Right, if they heard of the Bible. But if you didn't hear of the Bible, what would I be saying?
I don't know. You want to take a shot at that, Hilltop?
If I come to you out of nowhere, you never heard of the Bible, nothing before. I just say, yo, hell, God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believe in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. What would you think that I'm saying?
That we got to believe on a man and live forever.
Right, on a man. But it never told you who the man was. Right. See, you've been pre-programmed to believe that's talking about JC. Could it be that the only begotten son is Israel as a nation?
Yeah, I've heard
it
that
never
before.
Said who his son is. We've been the point that I'm saying to you is that we've been educated and brainwashed to believe the Bible a certain way. So when most Israelites talk on social media, they sound like a religion versus a nation. You see what I'm saying? So they don't have the correct breakdowns, because remember, they created something in 1958 called COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence program, which would stop the rise of a black messiah who would electrify the nationalistic aims of Black America. And they made 5 salient key points. And in one of them key points, they told us that it would be long range effects. And what they needed to do is cause a severing from the people in their leadership. So this is why most people today, not knowing that they are part of the COINTELPRO effect, when you don't have elders in your community, notice all nations of the earth, they honor their elders. I've been to 17 African countries. I've never seen elders openly be disrespected. I've never seen that since I've been in Africa. There is a reverence to the elders. There is an importance to have elders. You're a man of respect when you sit amongst the elders in your Pacific communities in Africa. If you see a young man constantly around elders, you will see the difference of respect with the youth to that other youngster that deals with the elders. So that's a badge of honor. In the United States, we're not dealing with no elders. We're not dealing with no. What happened to our Mr. Miyagi's? Where's our Shokazukis at? Huh? Where's our Abbots at? Where are our leaders and teachers to pass down the general information and then the sacred information to our people, so we can become productive and fulfill what is said in Deuteronomy? Matter of fact, could you real fast, Don Yahuda, or matter of fact, Prince Adonai Zadok? Let me ask him something real quick.
Yeah, I'm here.
Do you have the Bible? Do you have the Bible with you?
Yeah.
Could you read real fast to us Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 7?
Deuteronomy chapter 32.
Yes, verse 7.
Verse 7.
Deuteronomy chapter, yes, Deuteronomy 32, verse 7.
All right. Remember the days of old, the generations long past. Ask your father, and he will tell you. Your elders, and they will explain to you.
You heard that.
Remember the days
You
of
heard that.
old. Consider the generations long past. Ask your father, and he will tell you. Your elders, and they will explain to you.
You see that? So my son, everybody mute. My son just gave you two translations of the same verse. It's a commandment in our culture to go to the elders before us, go to our fathers, our abim, our abbas, our zakwanim before us, so they can lead us, so they can tell us, so they can show us. And what's happening in the Israelite community, many people are just saying that they're leaders in our community and or they're teachers. How you gonna get in the Israelite culture and a year later you're a teacher? Who gave you the authority to teach? Like when I was coming up in the Israelite community 33 years ago, anybody just couldn't wear a turban. You had to learn, first you had to earn to get a turban. And that might take you 15 years to even rock a turban. So you couldn't just come into the Israelite community and say, see, I'm a teacher. This is why so much confusion on social media when it comes to real Israelite leaders. You see what I'm saying? So it's very important to have leaders in your community, such as myself, such as Zion Lex or Moray Yoel or Dr. Bainzy D, Sar Dr. Kazriel Ben Yahuda, somebody like Adon Yahuda, or even a Hilltop, people that been in the culture for a very long time that has experienced what we're talking about, versus talking about it. Could y'all continue on with the conversation quickly while I use the bathroom real fast? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm coming right back.
Powerful build. Powerful build. Hey, this is another one for the books right here, bro.
Yeah, pretty good, man. I like different trains of thought, because it gets the people to really get to thinking, man. I like to make people uncomfortable. You know what I'm saying? I love it. Controversial and deep biblical breakdown, man.
Yeah.
But people get so used to their doctrines. When they hear something different, they get mad. This is why, and like the brother was saying, this is why I never want to make a traditional Israelite channel, because all they do is damn debate all damn day. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They want to debate and argue and gang up and click up, and nobody get edified because everybody think they damn right.
And it'd be the same topics over and over again.
Same topics over and over and over again. It gets redundant. And then they get mad with you when you don't want to know, man. I'm trying to bring everybody with different trains of thought to put it all together. You know what I'm saying? Nobody has all the truth. I know everybody think they got all the truth. My leader got all the truth right here. I broke off on one where we teach this, you still, come on, man. You know what I'm saying? You still don't know everything. You know what I'm saying? Iron sharp as iron. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, a lot of Israelites, man, remind me of Christians, man. They get uptight, man. You know what I'm saying? They get real uptight. They get real, angry, you know what I'm saying, when they hear something new. Go ahead.
You know why that is? Because a lot of people lifestyle is based off of what they believe. So when you jar the system, that's almost like an assault on their being. Like they take it personally, like everything they hinged on this particular belief, and they're not willing to go outside the box and study, learn, even listen to some new information. I mean, just the information he's bringing. I'm not going to say it's 100% exact and right, but if you really listen to what he's saying, and if you read some of the literature he's presenting, and you're looking at scriptures and other writings, there is definitely a correlation between a lot of the stuff that he's bringing out and the things that we see in scriptures. You understand? And some of the historical aspects, like when he was talking about the pharaohs, the snake, if you're familiar with the Nagas and the Hindu history, Hindustan, which is known as India, they have ancient temples that show their gods with like the 7 snakes behind the head. Matter of fact, you were over in some countries and you showcase that on your social media platforms. If you want to speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, when because these Asian countries because India is considered an Asian country. Russia is considered an Asian country. They're not Oriental, like, this red, but so they all got the, the Hinduism, the Buddhism, what I'm saying? A lot of Asian countries, got a few Asian countries that's Muslim. They all got, a little bit of Christianity in them, but the main majority of the religions over here is Hinduism, Buddhism, because they go together in Islam. And, I think you're talking about the video where I went to the Sanctuary of Truth. So Sanctuary of Truth has, you might have seen Offset and Travis Scott do a video inside. I think they did one together, and then Offset did one by itself inside the Sanctuary of Truth right here in Pattaya, Thailand, where I'm at. Doing the Rolling Loud Festival about 2 years ago, which they got another one coming up this weekend. Matter of fact, tomorrow, it starts today. But anyway, so inside the Sanctuary of Truth, they got, artifacts, carvings from Thailand, Cambodia, India, Indonesia, which I've pretty much been in all those countries besides India. But India's right next door. And also what the brother was saying, when you talk about the Indian people, about how a lot of them, got that, I don't know what you would call it, Neanderthal, the monkey. I don't want to be disrespectful, but the hair all, I mean, literally, man, you can barely see skin and they are very, very dark skin. I was laughing when he said it because my mom was like, hey, I see some African girls and they was light skinned. You need to find out what country they had to go over there. I'm like, Mom, Africa got 54 countries in it. Continent, you know what I'm saying? And most of them want to be looking just like us, from light skin or very light skin to dark skin. You got some countries that may have more dark, very, very dark skin more than light skin, but they are different, though. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, when the brother was talking about, the snakes on the Indians, like I got all that in it's a vlog on Hilltop traveling everywhere, and y'all can go check out the Sanctuary of Truth. Also, I got plenty of temples and stuff. You know what I'm saying? I love to get the footage because it shows. If you look at when I be showing these things, you see they be Negro. I be telling my heroes, look at Buddha black man, that chocolate man. You know what I'm saying? You got the shit knots, you know what I'm saying, in his head, the Bantu knots, everything, the whole nine. You can look at the features. So, and I see this in every country, from Thailand to Cambodia, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, wherever. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I don't seen it. Vietnam, you know what I'm saying? So I don't seen it. So, yeah, it's pretty much good. I mean, I this is why the Most High wants us to travel, because you can only learn so much sitting in America. We got an internet, we can see books, we can see, you can kind of Google these places, but when you go, that's when you see in places that you might not see on YouTube. You might not see, you know what I'm saying, on whatever platform, TikTok and all that, and you actually there. You can see it and touch it and go around, So, yeah, it's an enjoyment to see not only these monuments, but you can also see our people in these different countries. You know what I'm saying? And they're gonna look, they're gonna be looking a little different. Like I mean, we've been in so many captivities. You know what I'm saying? I bet you we look a little differently than our forefathers going back all the way back to Abraham and Judah and Isaac and Jacob and all them. I bet we look a little bit different. You know what I'm saying? Because we don't went through so many captivities. You know what I'm saying? Then we're gonna have a little different, a little bit of phenotype different. So yeah, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, just to catch you up, my Hebrew, we're just alluding to the information you was bringing, and that archaeology showcases a lot of the information that you were bringing out, the correlations, which when you came back, we had segue into the snakes and the Nagas and the Hindustan origins and how you see that when you mention the pharaohs and things of that nature. And Hilltop, he's been to a couple of those places over in Asia where they showcase some of these things, like you were saying, the Buddha, which you know to be the Black Buddha. They even have, you know, remember the cartoon Sambo? That was actually a Hindu god, Black Sambo or Sambu. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of these things, they bring out the information, but they don't tell you exactly where they get the information from. But they like pointing the finger at you, giving you breadcrumbs, but it be flying over our head as a people, you know. So a lot of people got to just really open their ears. They say if you have ears to hear, then listen to what's being said, because if you don't, man, you might miss out on some real good information like the brothers bringing out tonight.
And shout out to HB Gone Global. You know what I'm saying? He another fellow traveler, you know what I'm saying, from Georgia like me, from Albany. And you know what I'm saying, he's been down there recently in South Africa, down there with the Lemas down there in Cape Town and Johannesburg and all that stuff down there. So he's a traveler as well. So shout out to HB Gone Global.
Hey, I got one more question for me for the night. Oh, go ahead, Prince.
We need $45, y'all. We leaving. I want to leave this morning. It's what time? What time is it?
It's 11:09 in the States.
7:09 a.m. I want to be on the 11 o'clock bus going to Morogoro, which would take me probably like 7 hours or so. I want to go see a group known as the Nyombo. That's NYAMBO. And they teach that they're Israelites. And I'm going to be interviewing briefly some of the tribal leaders over there. And I've done this before on many occasions, and give a shout out to FOP Israelites who put a lot of my ground footwork research on their channel. This research, I want to put it on the Scorn Black Man podcast, because what I'm doing, right, there was a historian or a traveler of the 9th century ACE known as Adad the Danite. And his records, he speaks about the Israelites in East Africa. And he gives the locations in Tanzania, even though he didn't call it Tanzania. But in this area, there are Israelites. And thus far, the areas I went to that Adad the Danite spoke about, there are Israelite presence there. So not only are we talking about reading true history from Adad the Danite, but you got actually a modern day social anthropologist and historian like myself that's on the ground, that's actually doing the research. See, we in an era right now, we don't have to go to European scholars no more. Look at Hilltop, he traveling everywhere. So if I want to know about Asian culture, I go to him. I have to be like, well, I'm gonna read this guy right here. I'm gonna go to a living, breathing, flesh and blood man who's over there in Cambodia, Thailand, all them different areas. And I'm like, brother, you seen any Israelites over there? Or is this going on? Is there a Buddhic connection with the Israelite culture? What do you see over? And he's gonna tell me. And this is where
they got a tribe called the Mohican. The Mohican tribe in Thailand and I think Thailand and Laos and probably Cambodia, but they are the Negroid, you know what I'm saying, Asian. They mostly in South. They keep them like in the South areas and up in the mountains. You know what I'm saying? They really don't come out and, you know what I'm saying, and mingle in with the regular locals. You know what I'm saying? So they got their own.
What they call
Mohican, Moken, or something like that. I'm gonna text you the name of it. I'll text you the name of it.
The point is, I never even heard of that until he just said it. The point is, you get a different historical experience when you're on the ground versus you reading something. Because you know, many historians only regurgitate what other historians say. And
Right.
from that, sometimes errors can come in. Versus like, y'all saying that Israelites in Africa, well, let's go to Africa and let's see yours out. You're saying that now y'all can't say that no more because it's all out on social media. So now y'all saying, well, these are converts to Judah. Well, let's go see what they say. There are two different understandings. The Hebrews that already been there, and then you got Hebrews that were upholding the Hebrew culture that European Jewry contacted and converted them to Judaism. Like, for instance, you see this with the Falasha, the so-called Falasha. They knew that they were Hebrews. They was upholding the Hebrew culture. But then when the year came in, they imposed Judaism on them. You see? So this is the same even with the Igbo. You see this with the Igbo as well. Before they even came in, they was already upholding the Hebrew culture. Judaism and the Hebrew culture is two different things. And these people know that. Judaism is a European interpretation of Hebrew culture, right? So basically, that's all I'm saying. We need $45. We need y'all the Cash App, the Mighty Hebrew, Uriah Victorious. We need y'all hump so I can catch that bus, do that interview. And there's people here. We got some people up in here. If each person drop $10, $15, bang, whatever, until we get the 45, or even if it's more, that money can be used the rest to give as a donation to the village. Because I'm gonna be in the village for 2 days. So when you go to villages and you doing this type of stuff, you don't just go there and don't give them nothing. You give them something. You know what I mean? And when you give them something, then they give you something. I want to know how these people got from point A to point B. And I want to get it on record. I want to get it on record. So when people like Sinetta say, well, you know, it's this, that, the third. Not Sinetta, but people that's on his show that believe in that, and even Sinetta at times. Well, I can say, well, I went and interviewed the Nayumbo people. And matter of fact, we can pull that up right now on the Scorn Black Man podcast, and let's hear what they got to say out of their own mouth. Not what you say. We want to hear what they say. That's what I did when I was in Dimona, Israel. I took advantage for 2.5 hours and interviewed African heads of state, tribal chiefs, royal families from Ghana, Nigeria, all. It's on there on FOP Israelites, and they was breaking down how they were Israelites and how they migrated from Israel to West Africa. So you saying them people lying too? They have the anthropogenesis of their history, but that's all just made up too. See, if there's an establishing element in East Africa and West Africa, it aligns with what we're talking about, known as the Bantu expansion that started around 740 BCE. And the Bantu expansion, we see it going into East Africa and shooting over the West Africa. And then we also see the later Bantu expansion during the Babylonian captivity. Now we're seeing Israelites migrate into West Africa. Why do you think when you go into southern Nigeria, you see something called the Imo Yom Kurum, known as the strange people in the Yoruba vernacular? But they call themselves Bene Ephraim, the children of Ephraim. Even when you go, even though I don't associate with the Talmud, but historically the Talmud speaks about the 10 tribes of Israel went into Africa. That's what the Talmud say. So I'm showing y'all not only through academia research, but through my own ground footwork research to verify what we're saying as Hebrews. The so-called Negroes in the Western Hemisphere, the African Americans, your Jamaicans, your Barbadians, They the children of Israel. Your Afro-Latinos. They are the children of Israel. We have the cosmological evidence. We have the anthropological evidence. We have these things to verify what we're saying. We're not just saying these things just because somebody just had a miraculous dream and that now we Israel. When in fact, we got over 30 million Igbos alone, even though it's more Igbos over there, but 30 million of them saying that they're Israelites. And we know that a large percentage of foundational Black Americans have Igbo ancestry with them. So we can't deny that. And for those that want to know if the Native Americans are Israelites, no. The only Israelites that are Native Americans, or the only Native Americans that are Israelites, are your southeast United States. The Geechees are West African Israelites that amalgamated with Israelites of Southeast United States, such as your Chippewas, your Blackfoots, your Mohawks, your Apaches, your Cherokees, your Yamanese, your Seminoles, your Wassatals, all them type of natives. Why you think when you go into James Andar's book, The History of the American Indians, notice he only specializes in the Southeast United States Indians. They are your Israelites that came during the time of King Solomon's naval fleets, going into Lake Superior, getting ores and taking them back to the old world. The reason why they finding Israelite artifacts, they're finding them in areas that were colonies. And then them colonies later became known as your Southeast United States natives. But them Aztecs, them Incans, them Hawaiians, them Samoan, they not our people, man. They not our
Mongolian.
people. Yeah, they Mongolian and also
Mongolian, yeah.
Because when you start talking about the Hawaiians, the Seminoles, the Samoans, all of them go back to Australia and Polynesia and all that. When you start studying up on, like you said, them Aztecs, a lot of them is in certain North American, a lot of them are Mongols. A lot of them are Mongols. So we got to understand Israel, we came in two ways. We came in during the 8th century BCE, remnants of the Northern Kingdom, with King Solomon's naval fleets, and stayed and created colonies and became known as Southeast United States Indians. And then you got the Southern Kingdom that came during the transatlantic slave trade. And a lot of them amalgamated with Israelites that were already there. That's why most Black Americans talk about they got Indian in them. My mother's side of the family are Cherokee, but the Cherokee or the Black Cherokees they come out of is during the time of 8th century BCE. My mother's side of the people came to the Americas by the way of colonization. They were a part of colonies that built the mounds and all that. And then on my father's side, they came by the way of West Africa. The Igbo Israelites of West Africa, 1619, Jamestown, Virginia. And through my father, mother, amalgamate and produce me, and in turn, produce my son. My son's mother is an Afro-Latino. My son's mother is quote unquote African-American and Afro-Dominicano. So she's half quote unquote African-American and half Dominican. And then you have myself, which bore my son that you see right now on the screen with us.
Con. Man, we're definitely gonna still do the show part 10 of controversial and deep conversations with Hebrew Israelites of different teachings and different doctrines. I'm gonna try to do that whenever you come back to like your home town over there in Tanzania, and try to have like one or two other brothers or sisters on. And once again, those topics is going to be what happens to our spirit when we die. What laws of the Most High / Creator are we commanded to keep? Should we be planning an exodus out of America? Talking about you black folks, you Negroes. I know y'all love to think you safe over there, and that's the best place in the world, but we're going to see. Will Christ / Yahushua or another Messiah come to lead us back into rulership on this earth again? And then we have two bonus questions. Bonus question number 1. Are there other life forms outside of this planet and inside the earth / inner earth? Are we under the New Testament or Old Testament? And those could be the bonus questions. So looking forward to having you on that show, brother. I know you got some interesting answers, and it'll probably be one or two other brothers or sisters on to give their opinions about those topics as well.
Hey, Hilltop, it might not be no exodus. You see they trying to launch those missiles over into Russia today. The EU ramping everything up.
Yeah, Biden trying to start it up before he get out of there, man.
You see why it's important to support this over here? Because I'm telling you, y'all gonna have to turn over this joint, man. Ain't no escape, Jake. Y'all gonna have to get over here eventually. So I got the stage here. Prince Asiel, he seen it. He said, I'm sending you. I'm like, Masaba. I love United States.
Hey, Prince, man, you got to send that info over. You got to send that info over so I can look at it, man, about the repatriation and getting over there.
Yes. After my son finishes schooling, he gonna come over here and and visit and stuff. One of his brothers and sisters, is already over here. But I need him to get over here. But I'm gonna wait for him. I mean, he's gonna come visit first. But to actually stay, because I want him to do some traveling with me. I want him to finish school. And then we're trying to contemplate college or the military. So trying to contemplate right now what you want to do. So, we working some thoughts. He always said, I want to be over there with you, Ab. But I need, I have my reasons. I want him to get a degree. You know what I'm saying? Because it's beneficial for the nation. You see what I'm saying? We have to gear our children not only to benefit their personal lives, but also for the nation. Because they're the next generation. And if we talking about creating a new civilization, then we don't just want no just Israelite teachers alone. It's just talking about the Bible. We need engineers, we need chemists, we need biologists, we need scientists, we need astronauts, we need it all. Lawyers, doctors, for the irrigate land, agriculturalists, botanists, psychologists, psychiatrists. We want it all to help us to build the nation. Because once the United States is destroyed, we're going to need all that. We're going to come out with great substance, brothers and sisters. And Aaron J. Going on, Ed, I see you, Aaron J. You know what I mean? He's saying the third war coming quickly. It's coming quickly. So, I will be in the States. I want to get there sometime in January. To be honest, I'm ready to get all my kids and just bring them over here. Because it looks like it's about to get crazy, man. You know what I'm saying? It's looking right now, man. So I'm going to talk to my Eli D and see if they just want to go ahead and go to school online. You know, it's getting crazy. I'm serious. It's getting crazy over that joint. and I'm here and I got all this. So it's like, I want them here. So support. It shouldn't be just the Scorn Black Man podcast. With the audience, y'all want a lot tonight. Remember, I want to catch this 11 o'clock in the morning bus. So I got 3.5 hours. I got to go get that bus ticket. I'm out of here. I want to do this research. The ticket is $45. Hopefully, I got donations. I didn't see them say nothing yet. But hallelujah. Thank you for having me, y'all.
Thank you for coming on.
And little amount of Hebrew, man. The Prince, man. You got any final words you want to say?
I just want to give you thanks, all of y'all, for allowing me to be in your very presence today. I want to congratulate my father. He gave a excellent speech, absolutely phenomenal, and I want to congratulate you. I was speaking to him when not so long ago. He asked me, "I would like for you to take the torch," and I was like, "I'm honored to even have you say that to me." You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate all of y'all as a whole, 100%. I would love to do this again. I'll be in active conversation and communication with my Abba, and we'll go from there. But like I said, I appreciate y'all, my brothers. May y'all be with y'all.
All praises.
It was an honor. It was definitely an honor.
More the black youth, the black men and the black women, the youth, you know what I'm saying? And this is what we need. So we could turn a lot of that mess to go on over there in the Babylon. You know, the prophecies must happen. It's going to go down, but we could try to ease some of this thing down, man. And it starts with the youth. So it starts with youth like him coming up here and the other youth saying, okay, now, you know what I'm saying? Then, you know, the young men and the young women. So all praises for that young man. And, you know what I'm saying? Keep doing your thing and keep listening and watching. And you're going to be a great teacher like your father. You know what I'm saying? You might be a better teacher than your father. Because I know that's what he hoping. We all hope that our sons and our kids be better than us.
Absolutely.
So we're going to end this program. I'm like to thank everybody in the chat. Aaron, Professor Lovely Lady, everybody. I mean, it's so many people. I think, let me see, can I name some of them? Because some people get mad. Aaron, Professor Lady, HB on Global, Anthony, Nubian Messiah, just so many people. John Doe, Hallelujah, Amber, you know, Darryl Kaufman, man. Shout out to Darryl Kaufman and the Waspy family and stuff. You know what I'm saying? So shout out to everybody who watched on Facebook, man. Everybody who watched on Facebook. You know, we're going live.
Yeah, I want to shout out Raquel. That's an Erie-ite young lady that be doing some diligent studying, man. I first met her. She ended up giving me 2 books. She dropped 2 books to me, like, you can have these. Take this.
Okay. Shout out to Black Jetty.
We got some sharp sisters too in our community.
Yeah.
So shout out to everybody. You know, and y'all like, support, you know what I'm saying? Support the channel, like the channel, subscribe to the channel, share the channel, share this show, you know what I'm saying? Support the Mighty Hebrew, you know what I'm saying? Here goes his Cash App again, the brother trying to get over here to get the information that we need. Because all this is evidence. This is foundation, this is archaeological and biblical and historical proof. This is what Hebrew Israelites do. You know what I'm saying? We just don't sit here and talk. We may have differences in doctrines and differences in certain books, but at the end of the day, the Most High tells us, you know what I'm saying, make sure we got a biblical, historical, and archaeological proof. So with that being said, I wish you all peace, love, and hair grease to you all. Don't forget to support the channel. Don't forget to support the brother. And you know, just we got to do better. We got to do better. We got to learn. And programs like this make me, I could do this for 3 more hours, man. You know what I'm saying? It's just all about learning, all about putting knowledge. You know what I'm saying? Because thing that Most High told us, you know what I'm saying? We are destroyed people because we lack of knowledge. You know what I'm saying? We depend on the white man for knowledge and this person for the knowledge. And it's just like, come on, man, it's right here in front of us. You know what I'm saying? Read, travel. You know what I'm saying? A man or a woman that travels, you know what I'm saying, increases their knowledge. You know what I'm saying? So travel, read, study, you know what I'm saying, and practice keeping the laws and commandments, you know what I'm saying, through meditation and everything. Until next time, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.